Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Doula Givers Level 1 End of Life Doula Training. My name is Suzanne O'Brien. I am thrilled to be here with you. Thank you so much. The first thing I want to say is thank you for being here. I know that we all have really busy lives. We have people on this webinar from all over the world. There are people that were emailing and saying that they were going to set their alarms at 2 a.m. And, it's such an honor, and it also is a reminder of how we're all touched by this subject, end of life, and how important it is to be there and support one another and educate one another where we have knowledge. We need to share that because knowledge is the answer to everything. Education is the key to everything. And so I'll talk about my journey in a minute and where I have a lot of this background. I feel really, really important that I get out there, use a platform to share the wealth of information I have in this right now very closeted space, this closeted topic of end of life. So this is exactly what the program is, and I'll share a bit more about that. So my name is Suzanne O'Brien. I want to welcome you to the free Level 1 Doula Givers End of Life Doula Training. This is the 90-minute version. I am also going to answer your questions live at the end of tonight's webinar. So please feel free to write in a question at any time and in the question box, and I will address it at the end. I always say congratulations, and I really want to emphasize that because you are going to take part in an education series tonight that will hopefully change your life. It'll empower you with wonderful information. Again, I said that education is the key to just about everything. I always say I don't tell people ever what they should choose for care and end of life. I do want you to make informed decisions. And that is something that I feel is really missing. We don't talk about end of life. Most of us don't really know what that looks like or the first thing about caring for someone at end of life. And with that, unfortunately, when we're making decisions for healthcare and for different treatment options or things that come later in life, we don't have a good grasp on what choices we have and what things mean. And that is, again, so vitally important to have information so you can decide what is the right choice for you. This is about your journey at end of life and as you age, and you should have it your way, as long as it's provided it's not, of course, a safety issue or hurting anyone else. This is a subjective area of decision making, and you do have decisions. There's lots of things we can do. There's lots of support and help. You just need to know about it and where you can access it. So I always say congratulations for being on this webinar. The feedback from the Level 1 training has been absolutely incredible. We have emails and reports back from people, and they've used it all over the world because this is something that you can use anywhere. And the wonderful effect that this had for families, patients, communities, even medical providers. Having this training, the difference that it made in the care of a patient and their family has been enormous. So for doula givers and for myself, I'm committed to a platform of being able to share as much knowledge and information that I possibly can with the world. And that's another thing that's wonderful about webinars, is that we can meet from all over in any time zone in any place in the world. But we do give live events as well. So this training is something, it's our global outreach. It's also really for people that are interested now in the end of life doula trainings and profession to get an idea of what that looks like. What is the training? How is it run? And is it something that feels right? So the movement, the end of life doula movement is on. And I have to tell you, I've been at the end of life doula piece for 10 years now. It's really in the last year and a half that, boy, has it taken on a different level. And it is so exciting to see. The ironic thing as well is that there are so many people that still do not know about the end-of-life doula profession or what an end-of-life doula does. So we're going to cover all of that tonight and know that you are on the cutting edge and groundbreaking, really, the biggest shift in care that you're going to see in healthcare is the doula coming and playing a part in all of the gaps that mainstream healthcare can't fill, which is really the time. We're all running around. These people doing the work are absolutely incredible. Doctors, nurses, CNAs, all of them. And it's a very, very difficult space to work in now because they have so many patients. They have so many tasks to do. They have to see large numbers with limited time that they can actually be with the patient. So I know because I can speak from that place myself as a former hospice nurse and oncology nurse, which is cancer nurse. Most amazing people in the world working so hard to make a difference for people, but it's really challenging because of the way the system is set up, the reimbursement system. We're not given a lot of time to be with patients. But the other reality is that as a society, we're not doing our part either. So we're not taking charge of how we would like to age, what treatments we might want or not want at the end of life, doing our advanced directive paperwork. So, it's a multi-layered place that we are in right now that's gotten to this very challenging and dysfunctional aging and end-of-life process. But for something that is 100% guaranteed, that we are going to age, that we are going to have an end-of-life experience for our loved ones, for friends, for ourselves. The elements that I'm going to teach you tonight and things that I've learned that can make that end of life, that inevitable end of life piece, go 80 to 90% better than if you don't do those things. So why not? And also there's a lot of wonderful bedside sharing that I'm going to do from patients themselves, what they talk about at the end of life, what their needs are, what could make it better for them, and what their perspective is as they look back on their life, what they've learned and what they want to share with us. So this course is going to be full of a lot of great information. The movement is on. There are national initiatives that are taking place right now. So as I mentioned, the last year and a half has really catapulted this into a different level, a different stratosphere. And that is being helped because of these national initiatives in the United States. I know that I believe Australia and Canada, it's taken on. It's, we're all trying to get to that place of where the end-of-life doula fits in within their healthcare systems in different countries, because understand that we all have that same thing in common, no matter where we are, no matter what culture, religion, socioeconomic status, we all are touched by end of life, and we all deserve to have the support and the education to make it go well for something that's inevitable. So for the United States, there are two initiatives that were put in place this year. One is NHPCO's End of Life Doula Council. Now, the NHPCO, for those of you who don't know, stands for National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization. They are the membership organization of all the hospices within the United States. So they set out best practices and they dictate different standards and really help them to obviously give the best care to their community. So the NHPCO is the membership organization in charge of all of the hospices throughout the country, and a wonderful organization. And NEDA, which is the National End-of-Life Doula Alliance, is a nonprofit membership organization for all of the end-of-life doulas now that are out there and the end-of-life doula trainers. So the council was formed to share the value of the end-of-life doula as part of the end-of-life care team. They're going to collect data from families and how the doula fits in and the benefits of the doula and all those wonderful things that are needed with a new profession and movement. and also we're setting up best practices. When we as doulas are out there and seeing what really works, we can share that information with them. They can share that with their members. And then NEDA is another absolutely amazing organization. So their website is nedaalliance.org. You should, if you are considering tonight doing this profession and training, you should go to nedaalliance.org at some point, and they have a national badge and assessment. That will be, I believe that will be out in mid-February, ready for people to take, and that will be a core competency assessment that end-of-life doulas can take and receive a national badge, which is really important because end-of-life doulas are not a medical licensure. It's not a training that has a license attached to it, and that's a good thing, and it's not a good thing. So why is it a good thing? It's a good thing because right now, as we said at the top of tonight's webinar, is that there are those of us who were working in mainstream medical who it was very challenging to get as much time with the patient and the family that was needed, especially in an end-of-life scenario. I don't know if you've been touched by end-of-life, but it doesn't have a time limit to it. You know, when somebody's going through their end-of-life phases, and there's going to be back and forth, and there's going to be ups and downs, and it could be difficult the whole entire time. It really requires the presence, the compassion, the kindness, and the education of somebody who can be there walking that family through that journey for the duration, like a birthing doula. So if you think of the word doula, doula is a Greek word that means non-medical person who gives physical, emotional, and spiritual support to another person. So it was really important in there that the doula word means non-medical person. This is a non-medical profession. Are you going to learn medical things in my training? Absolutely. It's the same way if you were the family member of a end-of-life patient, I'm going to teach you the same type of thing. So you are going to learn some medical terms related to the end-of-life process and maybe even the certain disease process that your loved one has. That's the same thing that I'm going to do in this course. So even though you are considered a non-medical professional and don't need a license to go with that, you do need education credentials, and the core competency badge of NEDA for a national standard is absolutely brilliant and amazing, and it's wonderful. So there's a lot of real movement happening, and it's happening at a rapid pace because I believe that we finally, as the medical system and as a community on the whole, realize the gaps that are missing right now and the value of having professionally trained individuals that don't have a time limit being able to help pick up some of those empty hours that are sitting there, because we only have one opportunity to do end of life correctly for somebody. One shot at it. We can't have a do-over. Most of the things that I've learned that I teach are things that we wish we could have done better, the things that worked, and talking about the things that absolutely don't work. So I want you to know I've worked with thousands of patients and families over the last 10 years, and I want you to really I want to give you everything, especially people who want to do this profession. One of the biggest issues is your experience. So for us to practice, one end of life experience is never going to be exactly the same as another. Why? Because there are different variables that are factors there. There's different elements of how that person is in their being, what the family dynamics are, just everything else that comes to play in that. And so you want to be, the more experience you have working in end of life with different scenarios, different patients, the more you're able to pull from those experiences for being a great practitioner. And that's what I really impart to you in this program, which is really important to get you all that experience per se up to speed right in one place. And then you go out and you get your bedside and you start acquiring your own. It's a beautiful, honorable space to be in. I think there's no other way that we can be of higher service to another human being at this time than to support them in something that is so very important. So why is the end-of-life doula becoming so needed and so embraced right now? 9 out of 10 people say that they want to be cared for at home if they were terminally ill. Now, this was by a National Hospice Organization Gallup poll in 1996. Every statistic, every survey that I have found since then, you can kind of take your own inventory. Where would you like to, if you found out you had a terminal diagnosis, where would you like to be? Would you want to be in a hospital? Would you want to be in some other type of facility? Would you like to be home? You know, most people want to be home in their surroundings, but that is not always accomplished very easily. So, for instance, hospice is so amazing. I absolutely love hospice. It's a holistic model of care. Hospice nurses are probably one of the most amazing groups of individuals that I have ever known. People who work in this space are just, to me, completely angels. And I know that they work tirelessly to make such a difference for patients and families. For me, it was a question of, again, feeling like I didn't have enough time with that patient that I wanted to have in that home environment, training that family. And what were the factors that allowed me to not have that time? Well, it's a couple of things. So there's 3 things I've really identified that are problems with where we are at such a difficult place at end of life in the care. Is number 1, death is the second leading fear in this country. So it's the second leading fear in the United States. Now, people always ask me what's the first, so I'm going to share with you that the first is public speaking. But death is the second leading fear, and it's palpable. You know, when people do have that fear, for some reason we've gotten in the last 100 years just completely turned around with the fact that we don't plan on end of life. We don't talk about end of life. So when it shows up, which we know it's 100% going to show up, when it shows up, it's a shock. We're not ready. Nothing's in order. Maybe sometimes even the person can't even partake in what they would want or not want. The fear allows everyone's stuff to come up. It's very interesting that end of life has a way of bringing everyone's stuff up to the surface, and you can have families that are completely fighting about what mom should have, what she shouldn't have. And at the end of the day, whose decision is it for what mom should have? It's mom's. But if mom is not feeling well, maybe she's not even able to physically take part in the discussion. And this is not something, you don't want to start discussing about what to do or not do for end of life when somebody is in front of you that is a terminal or just got a diagnosis, because that's when additional fear and crisis, we don't decide things right. And I can tell you, to this day, I have families who do not speak to one another because they had such arguments during the end of, so their mother died anyway, because we know we have an end of life. The fighting was unbelievable, and continued on past that person who had died. So really tragic to see that happen. We don't want it. But here's the really important thing. We want to give what is needed to have the 9 out of 10 people who say they want to be cared for at home the ability to be able to have that happen. So right now, about half of people die at home. So the other half are dying in hospitals or nursing homes or some other institution. So why is that if 9 out of 10 people want to be at home? Well, it goes back to us not planning ahead, us being very fearful of death. And so, again, talking about it and educating is one of the first things we can do to alleviate that fear. In fact, I hold a death cafe in New York City, and I had one last week. And the amount of people, I had somebody come who's a medical reporter, who's actually a doctor, but now a journalist for medicine, and came to the death cafe to see what it was all about, to get opinions from the people there. And she was blown away by what the concerns were, the conversation, again, this fear, the lack of knowledge. And so when people can come there and we can share that, I have so much information to be able to share. And I want to just bring a sense of peace to people who don't have any other place to get their questions answered, or something that they can do to secure some of their wishes. So she was absolutely blown away by all of the people that were there. That we had about 18 people there. Some people had not been there for a year, and now we're back because they were traveling. And we had somebody who's 88, 89, and a lot of 70 and 60, and then some younger ones as well. So again, this is a topic that touches us all, but really powerful getting this conversation going, and also saying again, if people want to be at home, how is that going to be able to be accomplished, especially if you have, let's say you have an 85-year-old man who lives with his 82-year-old wife, and that's all they have, the main caregiver. So hospice being an absolutely gorgeous holistic model of care, and hospice workers are amazing. As a hospice nurse, I teach the loved ones how to care for their dying loved one in the home. And so because the average person comes on hospice so very late in the end-of-life experience, I'm not able to fully give them, most of the time, I am struggling to give them as much education as I would like to give them in that short amount of time. So it goes back to not planning ahead. I think that I don't want to exactly say, but I think from 7 to 14 days, half of hospice admissions are from 7 to 14 days on the program, when they have up to 6 months. So we're just not talking about this in planning for when we are at end of life or terminal, where we'd like to be and how that can be accomplished. So very important that we talk about it. My patients. So this is when I was in the oncology care unit. So I'll talk from that space. I worked, so again, my name is Suzanne O'Brien, and for those of you who don't know me, I am a registered nurse, and I've worked most of my nursing career in hospice care, which is end-of-life care, and or oncology care, which is cancer care. And it was from the very first day I first started at hospice, believe it or not, as a per diem nurse. And that first day, I knew that I was in the exact place that I was supposed to be in. It was like a piece of puzzle fitting in. And I just felt so connected to something so much greater, something so much more important than just a job, a career. It was absolutely blew me away and was so powerful. But at the same time, patient after patient was not having that beautiful, sacred end-of-life experience that I know is possible and that I know people can have. And it was heartbreaking because they were left with, that being the family, with the last time that they were with their loved one, that they have tons of regrets, wish they had did it differently, don't even know what happened half the time because they're in a state of shock. So I thought, what is going on here, and how do we fix this? How do we make this better? And I didn't understand because I grew up with the awareness that death was a part of our journey. Death was a part of the life's journey. They're not separate. They go hand in hand. And I feel like when we realize that this journey will not be here one day for us, I feel like we live with a much more beautiful awareness and appreciation of every day. But in the oncology unit, so I started with hospice, and I realized that things weren't going as well as they could go by any stretch. And so I think that I went back and really wanted to go into a field where I saw what patients go through before they actually get to hospice, get to end-of-life care. And I guess, down deep the whole time I knew at some point I'd be an educator, but I really needed to understand what was happening. So I went to the Oncology Medical Center, and what was happening is, again, it's very scary when people are sick and when their life is threatened. And, it was heartbreaking. A lot of the things were really heartbreaking. And again, this lack of planning. If you don't express your wishes to your family and loved ones, to your physician, and have them in writing with an advance directive, it goes into what I call a default. And the default is that we're going to, as medical providers, they're going to do everything they can do to keep you alive because that's what is expected and taught. And I think that we forgot over the last 100 years, we forgot that dying is a part of the experience, that it can go well, but it needs that support and kindness and education for not only the patient, but for the patient's loved ones. So as I was in the hospital in the oncology cancer unit, I was working with all different types of people, young people, people getting treatment, people newly diagnosed, and people that were dying. And so for people who are really advanced, and I use for example, people who've lived a long life so that we have the best case scenario when we talk about end of life, but we know the reality that that's not always the case. I've had patients from 5 to 106. But right now, let's use the discussion for, somebody who has been lived a full life into their 80s and has disease process all over, not reversible, not going to get better. And what they were telling me, it was interesting when they were in the hospital, you get very close with your patients and they would share with me, they'd say, I just want to go home. Why am I here? I just want to go home. And these were people that, had their cognitive abilities, were clear, sound of mind, were weak, but were clear and in their thought process. And I would think to myself, and I'd say, Suzanne, if they can tell me that they want to go home, why aren't they? So it was very confusing to me. I don't think they understood. And I think a lot of families jumped in, a lot of fear jumped in, and a lot of us with a overall denial that end of life is part of this journey rushes in, and it really can create a lot more pain for this whole situation. So it's really an honor of these wonderful people that I got to care for, that I really have a voice for them, that I've come out talking about that we need to do better. We need to talk about this ahead of time so we don't get trapped in that default place. It is okay that you do whatever you feel. If you want 20,000 treatments and surgeries and try this and try that, I think that's fantastic. Just make sure it's informed decision and educated decisions that you are making. And for yourself, this is about your journey. So you want to make sure that you have what you want. Another statistic, healthcare proxy and living wills, known as an advance directive, is those two documents together. A healthcare proxy is somebody that you will name to speak your wishes for you that you've already chosen if you are unable to speak them. That is a healthcare proxy. And a living will is the document that says what you would want or not want for treatment if you were not able to speak for yourself. It's all laid out. So 87% of people say it's important. These documents, yes, they are important. 23% have them done. And I believe out of the 23%, I heard that half of the people actually know where they are located. This is not a document that will do you any good if you don't know where it is. Death is the second leading fear in this country, and I'm sure you can pull from many, many experiences in your life where you know somebody who got sick, where you started talking about end-of-life doula or this kind of work, and people say, oh, I don't want to hear it. Don't talk about that. Or how could you do that work? Oh my goodness, there's so much fear. And so I had to say to myself, what is this fear? I had to uncover, if I could, what the fear of death was, because it was so palpable and causing so much destruction at the end of life process. And guess what? I went on a journey. I studied. I tried to uncover everything, and I could find nothing. Absolutely nothing to validate fear being attached with end of life. What I will say is that most people have a regret that they didn't use their time well and wisely. In fact, I want to share with you that the number one regret of the dying patient is that they wish that they had the courage to live the life they know they were meant to live. That is really powerful. I really want you to hear that, because I want you to hear that for yourself. The number one regret of the dying patient is that they wish they had the courage to have lived the life they were meant to live, a life of purpose, something that they knew they were here to achieve and they didn't for whatever reason, listening to other people, not believing in themselves, So that's super important. So that fear is not a fear of death itself that I uncovered of anything. It's more of, I feel the biggest issue at end of life is my time is here. Oh no. And what did I do with all of that time? It's a great lesson for all of us. The number one fear of the dying patient is that they don't want to be a burden to their family. So they are really worried that they are a burden. And think how tragic this statement is. And I've had patients where I come in as the hospice nurse and, my patient kind of calls me over and we're talking and they say, I feel awful what I'm doing to them, to my family. They realize how shocked, stressed, and uncomfortable they are with caring for them for the most part, because we just don't, most people have not even seen somebody in the dying process. And now somebody's in the home dying and the main caregivers are the family and loved ones. So there's a real gap and disconnect there. There's so much more guidance that needs to be available for families, especially in the home environment, and that is the doula. So the number one fear of that dying patient is they don't want to be a burden to the family. So think about, you have a dying patient who is now burdened and upset that they are a burden and causing their family pain. That is not the energy that we want at this last time. We have to have this scenario be so much more healthy, natural, and supported so that people can have their last time with their loved one. 78 million baby boomers started turning 65 about 2 years ago. 78 million. That is in the United States. 20% of them do not have children. So this is significant. We are in an elder care crisis. It hasn't even been called to the extreme that it is needing to be called, but I've been working in it for a very long time. We have a crisis upon us with our aging, our elderly and end of life, and the numbers are going to get that much greater in decades to come. So when you want to do projections on care, what's available, what the need is going to be, we're in a crisis right now that is going to get so much worse. And if you're going to look to the mainstream healthcare and insurance to solve it, it's not going to happen. In fact, every time we turn around, unfortunately, more things are getting cut. Insurance is... I was with somebody the other day who was talking about when their father-in-law was dying. And they had to worry about, they were being told with their insurance what was covered and then it wasn't covered, and services. They were wrapped around a lot of that and worrying about the insurance and the coverage and the stress of that. And here was somebody they loved so much dying and the last time that they'd ever have with them. So when you bring in education to train non-medical professionals and even families that will have this education and skill to better be able to be comfortable, to be effective, to be present with their loved one, that's going to be able to alleviate these staggering numbers that are only going to continue. So the non-medical professional for caring for every aspect in our healthcare system is going to be the answer to what the crisis and the gaps are right now. Staggering. 20% don't have children. So when we look at our end of life and our aging, usually it's an adult child who will care for an aging parent, arrange that care. Not always, by the way. So sometimes that's not even an option, but there's 20% of people who don't even have that option. And a lot of them come to my death cafe. In fact, this one woman was there and she's always there. And she said, bunch of my friends, I think they're in their early 70s, bunch of my friends, we don't have any children, we don't have any family. Who is going to care for us as we age? They're petrified. Well, we're going to come up with something for them. But it's a really legit concern, and we want to be able to be of service and to make it better. Doula givers, end-of-life doula training, the skill of learning how to care for someone who is dying. So doula givers, that is our organization, doula and giver. It's our word. It really encompasses what we do. Again, that doula is a non-medical professional that cares or gives to someone else holistically, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. There are different levels to the end-of-life doula trainings. You are taking part in the free 90-minute Level 1 End-of-Life Doula training today. It is also known as the Introduction to the Certification course. So there are lots of people that are interested in becoming end-of-life doulas now and getting into this line of work. This is a wonderful place to come and get an overview of what this really looks like. What is the reality? How does the training work? And what does it do? What does an end-of-life doula do? And so the different trainings are the 90-minute, which you're taking part of today. And then I have certification end-of-life doula training for those who want to practice as an end-of-life doula. We also have the Doula Giver Specialist, and that is a training. It has 3 trainings that are within the program: End-of-Life Doula, Elder Care Doula, and the Doula Giver Care Consultant. And if we are going to make a difference in our aging and help to support them, it's not going to be resolved by just showing up at the end of life. It needs to be caring for our elderly holistically. That, by the way, they have statistics says that 85% of people over the age of 65 need some form of support at some point in their journey. That could mean 24/7. That can mean for a few weeks after maybe a fall or something acute. That can mean 3 times a week. But over the age of 65, 85% of people need some form of care. We are living for decades. So the good news and bad news, once again, our life expectancy has gone in the last 100 years from 46 to 79. That's huge. But with that, we are living so very long. But with living so very long, we're living with chronic illnesses, cognitive issues, physical limitations, and we need help. And these people need help. And it's not available. That help is not there, and it's not there holistically. So when you work with elderly as an elder care doula, you are a care consultant, which is somebody who helps them do that aging well planning. So it's not just helping people with their paperwork and advance directives. It's helping people to realistically look at where they could possibly spend their last years, how that would be attained, because I don't think people realize how much money it takes if you need to bring in care or things of that nature, and also physical limitations. Is it practical that somebody lives in a home where the bathroom is upstairs? Because usually it comes to a point where people can't walk stairs. So the Doula Giver Care Consultant works on all of those type of things with our clients before somebody is even aging. So well in advance, we have a loose A, B, and C plan so that, again, it's not a shock when we get to that place. There's always going to be different variables, but at least we have a blueprint and we have the paperwork and a plan. And our family is on board. So the different trainings we have are the Level 1 End-of-Life Doula, the Doula Giver the Doula Giver Specialist, which is the 3 trainings in one, and then we have the Certified End-of-Life Doula Practitioner. 100 years ago, this was a skill. We're going to talk about end of life right now and how to care for someone. This was a skill that was handed down generation to generation. So people will say, this is so incredible. This is brand new. It's really old. It's not really brand new. Now, did we incorporate all the wonderful modern knowledge and medications and things that we can to make this such a great training and education? For sure. But caring for somebody who is dying is a skill that people have been doing for thousands of years. It's really in the last 100 years that we have completely come full circle with not even identifying that end of life is a part of the journey, not knowing the first thing about what end of life looks like. I mean, if you think about it, most of our elderly live in different parts of the country or in different types of places like assisted living or nursing homes. And, sometimes we get that phone call that, mom died or something happened, but we don't see that decline. We don't see that process. And it's been really hard for people to be able to actually identify that death is a reality when we just don't see it. The other thing is it is very, very difficult to ask someone to care for a dying patient in their home when they don't have any background and they're petrified. I think it's really unfair, and I think we need to do better. So let's get out there and educate ahead of time. 3 phases of care in the end-of-life doula training. You have the shock phase, the stabilization phase, and the transition phase. The shock phase. So this is the beginning of your end-of-life doula training. This is when someone gets a terminal diagnosis. Oftentimes there is an overwhelming feeling of shock for both the patient and the loved ones. This shock can present itself in many ways, such as depression, denial, anger, and withdrawal. And I will tell you that the shock is what I see with 90% of the families that I've worked with and the patients. And very important to hone in here that as an end-of-life doula, as somebody is supporting someone at end of life, you not only care for that patient, but you're caring for the loved ones as well. Because everyone attached to that person with a diagnosis is affected by this end-of-life process. So it can be a really heavy place to be in. And each one of those people can be having different experiences with the same end-of-life diagnosis. So what can you do? Now, remember, it is very helpful to remember that this person and family have just lost all control over their life of what they perceive. So if somebody, I think it's always really helpful to try and put yourself in the position of somebody else. Walking in the shoe, we can never do it unless we're there, but just try. And if someone told you that you have a limiting time left to your life and that there is no reversing the process, it requires those around the family to have a very strong and supportive presence. So remember that this is not something that can be reversed. They're getting a terminal diagnosis. So for the most common reaction that I see, 90%, if not a little higher, of my patient and family has been just a shutdown, a shock. It's that moment of, oh my gosh, it's my time. So do we need to understand what that might feel like and also what we can do in that space? Because I've had so many people say to me, Suzanne, I knew somebody, they got a terminal diagnosis. I didn't know what to say. So I didn't show up. I didn't say anything. Well, no, and then they regret it. So no, we want you to be able to show up. We want you to have the tools to be able to show up. It is so important to show up and to remember about this control. So one of the things you want to do is establish trust and security with both the patient and the family. This can be even your own family. This can be a member of your family, your mom, your dad. You want to really be in that space of being grounded, being present, and being a great listener. I'm going to give you some techniques to do that. So one of the biggest things I want to emphasize is building trust and security at this moment because they're scared. And the patient's scared, the family's scared. And especially if you are going to be the end-of-life doula coming in as a practitioner, you have to establish this trust right away because it's going to set the tone for your relationship with that patient and family for their whole journey. And if you don't have trust with them, it's going to not be a great journey because they are going to look to you as the doula, as the person who does this, as guiding this journey for advice on what to do and just for strength and comfort. And if that trust isn't there, they're not going to be able to receive that. So It's vital to establish trust and security with the patient and their family at this time when their world has just been turned upside down. And the best way to achieve this is through being a strong, solid support. Never take over. Meet the patient and the family where they are in their process and work from there. Building the trust sets the tone for your entire journey with the family. So it's very interesting because coming from a nursing background and this whole never take over, you've probably seen or heard nurses who, part of their whole thing is to kind of give that tough love, is to say to the patient, okay, we're going to get up, you're going to eat your food, you're going to, you're going to do some physical therapy, you've got to get moving around. And it kind of gives that patient sometimes that push out of their comfort zone. This is something entirely different. And so for nurses that come into the end-of-life doula space, it's really important to be able to make that shift in thinking. And it's also quite hard because we have been doing it for so long as nurses one certain way. Well, this is different. The patient is the one who is in control, and we are here to support them in achieving whatever they need to for their comfort, physically, emotionally, and spiritually through this whole entire journey. So when I say to meet the patient and family where they are, what do I mean? So this is something that is very important, especially remembering that when you get a terminal diagnosis, you can be in all of those different places: denial, anger. Denial is an amazing mechanism for protection for our mind. So I've come upon newly terminal diagnosed patients, been assigned to them, and, they have said things like, well, I go golfing on Wednesdays, so, I'm going to go golfing on Wednesday, and they haven't been out of bed in weeks, and it was just something that they needed to say for their own security of mind or peace of mind. Am I going to sit there and tell them that they're not going golfing on Wednesday and to snap out of it, they have a terminal diagnosis and let's get real? Of course not. Am I going to ever let them try and get out of bed? And when they can, of course not. But they don't. For the most part, they're saying things to soothe their emotional body and what's happening here. So when you keep in mind that people have just lost control over their lives when they're given a terminal diagnosis, giving them back as much control as you possibly can is so important and strategic here. So I've had patients who would refuse to take their medicine or pain medicine because that's the only thing that they had a choice in, that they felt. And to their detriment, they were like, nope, I don't need it, because they had no control over the rest of their body. They weren't doing anything. They couldn't get out of bed or out of the chair, and their body is, deteriorating in front of them, and they're having, just a horrible time accepting that. And they said, no, I don't need it. I don't want it. And, obviously then their pain can get really out of control. So what I do is teach you as doulas to give them back as much decision making as possible. Let them direct you. So there's techniques that you're going to use in the shock phase that are really effective. Give them back control. Very important. What kind of control can you give them back? What can you say to somebody in a shock phase? Can you tell them it's going to be all right? Which is one of the things that we do a lot, by the way. When people are sick, we say, it's going to be okay. We don't know that it's going to be okay. And it diminishes their journey when we say things like that. So we want to really be careful on what we say and how we go ahead and interact at this point, even though we have to show up and there's lots of things you can do. So when you go to give them back control, what can you say? You can say that, ask them what you can do for them. What is that just doing? That's giving them back decision-making and control. Now, they might not be able to physically do the things that they want done themselves because of their illness, or whatever their situation is. Weak, not being able to walk, and just, very sick and tired. But they might have a list of things that they would like to achieve, like let's just say the lawn being mowed and or having the dog walked. Or a lot of the times my patients will say, can you please take care of my husband or my wife, which is the main caregiver. Because when we get a terminal diagnosis and people first come on the program of being on hospice and with a doula, is that they have usually been sick and been on a journey for quite some time. And when we get there, it's really exhausted, and maybe the house has been let go. And that main caregiver, think about that 85-year-old man, that 82-year-old woman taking care of him, has been bringing him back and forth to doctor's appointments, trying to help him get out of the chair. It is exhausting and too much. So a lot of times they'll ask me, Suzanne, please make sure my wife gets some sleep. Please help her. And so I usually do two things. I not only have this discussion with the main patient, is asking, what can I do for you? Just tell me. And I do it with the main caregiver as well. So very important to check in with both of them and give back as much control and decisions making as you possibly can. Can you say to somebody it's going to be okay? No, because we don't know that. Do we hope it's going to be okay? Okay, of course. Can we say to them that we're going to be here for them? Yeah, you can say that. Can you say that you're going to walk this journey with them? You'll be here with them through this entire journey. That feels really good to patients because they're scared and they feel alone. And when you tell them, when I tell people I'm a phone call away, I don't get the phone calls as much because of the feeling of security they have and the education, the relationship we build throughout the journey. They don't feel that they need to call me, in the middle of the night or call me in a panic, because we're working through that and they feel secure in knowing that I am a phone call away, which is really, really special. Meet the patient and family where they are, another really important place. Now remember, please, that end of life can take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. So you might have a patient who is in their shock phase, has then, had some time, moved through it, which we'll talk about in a minute. And maybe one day you walk in the house and that patient's having some emotional, whatever, they didn't sleep that night, they had a dream, they're all of a sudden scared again, they're end of life. You really need to support people where they are and work from that point forward. And if you have a patient and a patient, let's just say a patient for a minute, who is in denial with their end of life process because they are so fearful and they stay in denial their whole entire end of life journey, is that okay? Well, it actually is. Is it ideal? No, but it's not our journey, it's theirs. And we have to be there to support and love them as much as we possibly can. And, my goal is to have people obviously feel safe and supported, that they organically move through the 3 phases of life, which works out really beautifully. But if for some reason you have one of these cases where somebody stays in a denial place and that's what they had to do for their own protection and where they were, we just have to love them where they are and just make sure that, all the other things are taken care of that we possibly can. You cannot push people. You have to create the safe environment for them to be able to process and get to that place of acceptance with you by their side, but they need to come to it. And they usually do. I will tell you that end of life is an incredibly beautiful, natural experience, and most patients organically go through a lot of these beautiful cleansing and places of acceptance if they are given enough time and if they have the right support system around them. Build the trust. I can't emphasize how important this is. I have one patient story. I have so many, but I have one that I'd like to share, particularly with this trust issue. So I was assigned to a patient as a hospice nurse at home, and it turns out that she had come down from a different state to live with her son and his family, and they were going to care for her through the end of life. And when I first got to that door of that patient's house, the son answered the door, and he was in his 40s, a lovely man, and he was visibly almost shaking. And so I said, oh my, to myself, okay. Now, when I went in and met the patient, she's lovely. She had maybe a tiny little bit of pain, 2 out of 10. She was doing well, eating. I mean, this is one of these wonderful cases where we had months together, which is unusual. But she was doing well. It was the son, the main caregiver, who was an absolute wreck and mess. And so remember, in the very beginning tonight, I talked to you about if you are a doula, you are not only taking care of the patient, but you're taking care of the patient's loved ones as well. And so I knew that my immediate work was with him. And it was. So he didn't know he was an engineer. He didn't know the first thing about end of life. He was petrified. So we do the education, the talking, and I said, if you call me, I'll call you back within a few minutes. And he would just ring my phone to test me. And that's what I'm saying. The trust is so important because we were able to establish so much trust in the very beginning that he could count on me, because then he could relax a little bit, and we had this incredible, beautiful journey together till the very end. It was absolutely amazing. But he was testing me. I would tell him information. He would fact check me. He would test me on how long it took me to call him back. So critically important, you're their lifeline to the outside for the end of life case that they're taking care of at home. There might be no more serious position that we can be in than caring for that family and that patient, and we have to give 150%. And that's where these hospice nurses do that. They're absolutely amazing. They just have many patients at once. They can't be everywhere at once. So it's great to bring in some other people that can fill in the gaps of time. So for us, we had to build that trust. And when we did, our relationship started to relax, and we can focus on things and go through the journey up until, the very end of this case. I was in this house in the afternoon, and I could tell that this patient was probably going to die that night. She was in an active dying, going into that transition, or in that transition. And there was a daughter of the man who was taking care of, and the woman who they were living with, who was 8 years old, who lived with them. And I had a relationship with her as well. And I said, would you like me to wait till she gets off the school bus so that I can answer any of her questions, and we can go in and see grandma together, because grandma was in her deep sleep coma. And they said, you would do that? And I said, of course I would do that. So we did. I waited for her to come off the bus. And by the way, I wasn't on the clock anymore. And she went in, and the woman was breathing, her labored breathing. And I was letting the girl ask me any questions that she could ask, and helping out as much as she could help out. Putting a warm blanket on her grandmother, putting lip balm on her lips, and, just making sure she felt comfortable, and also letting them know that I really felt that she was going to die that night. As a doula, you get really good at this, and your job, especially in that latter part of the transition, is making sure that that patient is dignified and comfortable, but it's really turning a lot of your energy on that family, because it's happening. This patient is going to die in that home during the night with that family there. And if they're petrified now, you can only imagine how they're going to feel if they're really not prepared for that. So letting them know that. And it was so interesting, because I remember that the husband and wife had a little bit of an argument at the table, where the husband said, I'm going to wait for you, because I was getting on my shift at 8:30 in the morning, and I, as a hospice nurse, can go out and pronounce somebody who's died. So he said, I'm going to wait for you. If she dies in the night, I'm going to wait for you to get on at 8:30 and then call you. And the woman said, no, you're not. You're calling the on-call nurse, because hospice always has great on-call available. So that was like a little bit of a moment. Well, anyway, the phone rings for me at 8:30 in the morning. And here's the beauty of this. Besides so many just pieces to this wonderful experience, the day before when I left, this woman was breathing quite heavily. and labored, and we couldn't get her exactly that comfortable look that I'd like. And it's not always possible. Her mouth was hanging open because of everything going flaccid, and you could really hear the breathing, and it was a little bit disturbing and uncomfortable for people. She was kind of at an angle. We're trying to get her to sit up again. And so when I got to the house that morning, now you have to remember that these people have just lost their loved one. Their mother just died. I get to the door, they open the door, and they say, it kind of excited. They said, we haven't touched her. We want you to see her. Like that, and lead me into her room. And when I went into the room, she was sitting just in a perfect position in her bed with her mouth closed, almost like with a little smile. She looked simply beautiful. And here's what happened that night, they told me. At about 2 a.m, her bedroom was downstairs, and the son was sleeping on the floor next to her bed. At about 2 a.m, the wife said that she came downstairs and she said to her husband, remember that Suzanne said that she may not die in front of you, because this is another common phenomenon that we'll talk about a little bit more advanced in this course tonight. But patients, lots of the time, will wait till you leave the bedside. That's not the last thing that they want you to see. And this is so incredible, because many of them have been in a sleep coma for days with their eyes closed, not talking, even for weeks. And how do they know the 5 minutes that people leave the bedside that they choose to pass? Not always, but this does happen. So she said, remember, she said that many times people do not want to pass in front of you. And so he said, okay. She goes, why don't you come up to bed? So he went up to bed. And when they got, in the morning, when they woke up and they came down at about 5:36, this is what they saw. And they said, oh my goodness. She just looked so peaceful and so beautiful, and it warmed their heart. So it's so important to be able to establish trust in a relationship, because had I not had that trusting relationship, many of the suggestions and things that I talk about with that family, they would have not listened or not taken. And one of them that was significant was the fact that she was going to die, which is really important, but also the point that people sometimes need you to step away, especially if they look like they're ready to go and they're not. And a lot of times they need permission to go. And they took that advice and they did that, and it worked out beautifully. So building the trust right away in the first 24 hours, I cannot stress enough. Be a great listener. Make sure that you do everything you say you're going to do. So if you say, and I say, give yourself a cushion. If you say you're going to call tomorrow at 2, I always would give yourself a cushion. I'll call you tomorrow between 2 and 3, because you know how things come up. And if it's not, they know they can call you if there's a crisis. But the thing is, if you don't call at 2 and you said you were going to call at 2, it might sound simple. It's not. It starts to break down their trust in you, and it's going to set the tone for your relationship. We always ask 3 questions in every case, on every visit. Question 1, are there any acute issues? What is an acute issue? That's like pain, nausea, or exhaustion. Acute means something that is jumping out that needs to be rectified right away. Then, second question, are there any safety concerns? Fall risk, confusion, weakness, swallowing, 2 of the things that you know are going to go and have an issue with at the end of life, because again, we're not reversing this process, are the ability to stand and or walk, and the ability to swallow. So these are all fall risks. Safety concerns. You always want to be assessing for safety. And what other support system do they have? Remember, I talked about the 85-year-old man with the 82-year-old woman. That is not going to work. It might be working now. Let's just say that Mr. Miller can walk on his feet. He can get up by himself. He's a little weak, but he's okay and steady. We have an end-of-life scenario. We have a disease process that is going to continue to decline. So even if it's okay now, what do we have in place? Because we know that's going to happen. So instead of it happening or him falling, God forbid, I want to put things way ahead of time, because we can make this so much better. So case study number 1, and this is how the course works. If you're going to go into end-of-life doula training, most of the training is going to be with education and then given real life scenarios for patients and families, so that you can then put into practice what you've learned. Again, remember that 10 years of working at the bedside with thousands of patients and families, putting it into a program that you can get a lot of that knowledge all at once. So let's just do a quick one for shock phase. I'm going to show you how that works. We have an 82-year-old male with a diagnosis of terminal cancer. And a lot of times that as a doula, this is the information you're going to get. You're going to get how old your patient is and maybe what the diagnosis is, and that might be it. So let me read you a bit of the scenario. So you find out that he's been having chemo treatments for the last 9 months. He has a history of arthritis and high blood pressure. He lives in a house with his wife, who is 78. They have been married for 48 years and have 2 children who live out of state. Not uncommon. His wife has osteoporosis and cataracts. You enter the house on your first visit and find the man in a reclining chair sleeping in the living room. You notice a cane next to the chair. His wife is at the kitchen table. Her head is down and she is a bit slumped over. You notice that there are dishes overflowing in the sink and that there is unopened mail and paper all over the kitchen table. So let's just take this and do the 3 questions. So I show you how that is going to be your golden rule every case on every visit. So if you're visiting somebody every day as a doula and you come there and you're asking the 3 questions, why, and everything is, let's just say everything is fine. Why the next day would you want to ask the same questions? Because things change and they change quickly. And so great end-of-life care is being on top of these changes before they become really problematic. Are there any safety concerns? So when you look at this case scenario, the first thing, because safety is the only non-negotiable we have, are there any safety concerns that you see for this family? Well, the first thing that I'm going to point out is that you have an 82-year-old man and you have a 78-year-old caregiver. So there you have a safety issue because you have 2 elderly people. The second thing is, if you know anything about chemo treatments, he's been having chemo for the last 9 months. That can really take its toll on people. So that's going to be, he could be really weak. You already see that there's a safety issue. He's got a cane next to his chair. So this has safety all over it. Now, the other safety issue on this is that they live in a house. So they live in a house, the 2 of them alone. They have children, but they live out of state. And so where do you think that bedroom and bathroom are? Probably upstairs. This is not going to be something that's going to be doable. Maybe not now, maybe not in the near future. So you really have to, again, you want to be ahead of everything with putting things in place for optimal comfort on a daily basis for people. So safety is really important because you can prevent falls and things from happening, and with great attention and being a good caregiver, you can do that. Let's see, are there any acute issues that are happening? So the acute issue, again, what is an acute issue? Something that's jumping out at you: pain, exhaustion, nausea. Right now, just from this page and you will get all these case studies written out for you and exercises when you are in the class. You are going to identify just off of this page is that exhaustion. So that main caregiver has her head down at the kitchen table. You could tell she's slumped over. There are dishes overflowing in the sink, unopened mail. So you can tell that this has been quite the journey and that she is overwhelmed. So you want to get that woman some help and some rest. And what support system is available? So this is something, again, that I try and put into place right away. And I ask this all the time. Why? Let's say there's a son that comes home from California and he's been here for 2 weeks and dad didn't pass away and now he has to go back. Well, mom had 24 care with the son being there for 2 weeks, but now he's going back and she can't do this by herself. So you don't want to get caught in that scenario, which happens all the time. We want to make sure that, and I pull from everything. I pull from neighbors, family, from hiring a part-time doula, from volunteers, everything that we can do to get as much support and care in that house so that wife can be a wife and that husband can have quality time. They can have quality time with each other at this very last moment, not being exhausted and being responsible for everything. It's something that you can really set up beautifully with a lot. And people want to help. People are good. They want to help make a difference in the end of life. What can I do? You can tell them what they can do. You can start to arrange that schedule, that support system, having people bring in meals. It's absolutely wonderful what the doula can work with. Second phase is the stabilization phase, and that is one of my favorite phases during this whole end of life process. This is also where the magic is going to happen, if there's going to be magic, or where the work is going to get done. So let me tell you what the stabilization phase is, what it is. This is the phase where wonderful work can be done. It is hopefully a time when the patient's pain is under control and all acute issues identified in the shock phase have been addressed, leading to the highest quality of daily living for both the patient and the family. When things are stable, conversations can be had, goodbyes can be said, and unresolved issues can be addressed. I have to tell you that end of life is a holistic experience, mind, body, spirit. The emotional pain that comes with end of life, that can come, that usually does come with an end of life diagnosis, can literally cause physical pain and also just horrendous journey at the end. And so these pearls here, conversations that we need to have with one another, goodbyes that we need to share, and unresolved issues, this is where it's going to happen, if it's going to happen at all. And this will transform the end of life experience for that patient. Not everyone gets a stabilization phase. Why? Some people come in and go, well, unfortunately right now, I get many calls that the patient is in their transition phase. Can you come be the doula for this patient? They're dying. And they're literally dying, actively dying in a transition. So there's no awake, there's no conversation. It's just sort of, trying to rush in there and help. We want to be there way ahead of time so that people have a much better experience. So let's see what you can do. This is the perfect time to sit with a patient and talk. Ask questions about his or her life. This often leads to issues or situations that need to be looked at more closely and resolved. Forgiveness is the path to unconditional love. It is during this phase that we encourage giving and receiving forgiveness of things that we have done and things that have happened in our lives. Patients oftentimes do what's called a life review on their own and go over beautiful insights about the contribution they had in this world. Validate their feelings. Be a great listener. Encourage family members to have alone time to share with the patient. There are conversations that will need to be had that will not take place in a room full of people. These goodbyes are vital. The goodbyes, the thank yous, the I love yous, the I'm sorries, the please forgive me are vital to peace and acceptance, allowing for a positive passing. This is everything. This stabilization phase is the difference between an amazing end of life and one that is not. And so you need to know what to do in that shock phase, getting things down to a place of being stable, getting rest, getting it organized, getting control back to that patient, that the patient can be in a place that they can have a stabilization phase, because that is where the beauty and the work and it makes such a difference for people. Why is it important? Unresolved issues will prevent a person from having the most peaceful death possible. It is vital to use this window of opportunity while the patient is able to communicate and have lucid conversations to wrap up loose ends. Patients can do much of this work simply by talking about past regrets with the doula or a trusted loved one. It is amazing how, as a doula coming in too, patients will share with you what they might not share with a family member. Why is that? Part of it is that they don't want to burden their already stressed family with more stress, but they need to talk about things. There's things that are bothering them, and you built that trust. They can confide in you, and they will, and it's absolutely an honor. So we have a stabilization. I'm kind of going to go through that quickly, guys. I do this, it takes a lot more time when we do it in the class, but I want to give you another example of a stabilization case study. We have a 74-year-old woman with terminal cancer. So this particular woman lives in an apartment by herself. She is on Social Security, and that is her only source of income. She has a cat named Prudence, who is 7 years old. This woman has one daughter who lives an hour away. They have had a strained relationship for many years. Her daughter has 2 children, a girl who is 10 and a boy who is 8. The patient has been divorced for 30 years. She does not speak to her ex-husband. She belongs to a church where she has been volunteering for community functions for years. So, are there any safety concerns? So you're going to go back to those 3 questions. Are there any safety concerns? Well, we don't really know. We don't know how this woman is walking until we put our actual eyes on her and see her. But for right now, let's just say that she's doing fine. She's walking fine. But is this something that is of concern because we have a terminal diagnosis that this person is going to progressively decline? Yes. So now that she lives alone right now, might be, but this is not something that's going to be able to be safe in the near future. So that is a safety concern. Are there any acute issues? I would say an acute issue on here. Nothing terrible. It doesn't talk about pain, which you're always going to obviously assess when you go as a doula. You're always going to ask about different things like pain, exhaustion, how people are sleeping. There's a whole list of things that we do every day that we get to that you'll be taught. This woman, is there an acute issue? I wouldn't say there's necessarily an acute issue except for it turns out that this strained relationship is very serious. So is that acute? Yeah, because it is, we don't have a lot of time at end of life. And, we just talked about repairing or accepting and forgiving. And if this is something that we can see if there's a possible way to help facilitate some kind of reconciliation for both of them. If this woman dies and that daughter never gets resolution for whatever was happening, and those grandchildren didn't see their grandmother and they need explanation on what happened with that, there can be a lot of emotional layers here. But, again, at the end of the day, people are lovely and forgiving, and usually at the end of life, it can bring out the ability to go there. So that would be my acute issue. The other thing is I'm going to address that cat. So one of my main concerns of my patients, especially if they live alone, if they're dying and they live alone, is if they have a pet, where that pet is going to be placed. And we as doulas really try and bring a beautiful home that patient feels really okay and comfortable with, so that they can be at peace knowing that their pet will be cared for, that they don't have to worry about them when they leave. What support system does this woman have? Well, she has the daughter, which I got excited about in the very beginning, but then that only lives an hour away, but then as we read on, there's a strained relationship for many years. So I want to see what that is about and if that can be repaired. And I'm quite excited about the 2 children. They're at the age of 10 and 8, that they can really be instrumental in caring for their grandmother, and they should. We should not be shielding children and pretending that people are sleeping, or that they just go away and go on vacation and that people die, which is what people have told people in the past. You want to be honest with children, age appropriately, and hospice does a wonderful job of, they have social workers, there are many books, but you don't want to shield and pretend that end of life is not a part of our journey, and you want people to take part in the care of that person if they want to and are able to. Doulas seem to give that backbone of strength to the family to actually be able to care and love that end of life person, and it is so healthy to do. Phase 3, the transition phase. The transition phase. What it is, the transition period is the time right before a person dies. It is the transition from this world to the next. This period can last anywhere from hours to days. Usually it's days. What can you do? As a doula, you should be aware of the way that the body physically shuts down. Systematically, we all die the same way, no matter where you are in the world. And no matter what disease process someone has, the body goes through many of the same steps in the very end. Not everyone will go through every step every time, but it is best practice to be familiar with all of the steps or stages so you can identify what is happening and suggest interventions for comfort, or simply let the family know that what they are seeing is a natural part of the dying process and not to be afraid. That alone, for me to explain to them how the body is shutting down and that that is a natural part of the process, has alleviated so much fear with patients and families. Absolutely amazing. Why is this important? The transition phase may be the most stressful period of care due to the quick changes the body goes through as it starts to shut down. It is during this phase that the patient will go into a deep sleep as the body eventually dies. There are several changes to be aware of so that you can offer suggestions for comfort or simply reassure the family that what is happening is a natural part of the dying process. This knowledge alone can be so comforting and mean everything to that family. So I want to talk to you for a minute about indications that someone is going into a transition phase. You get really good at being a doula and identifying when those nuances of the shift in a change in a patient, when they're decline. And the transition phase, being aware and being on top of when it's coming and preparing families is one of the most important jobs of a doula. It also can be a little challenging, but you start to get really good at it. So I want to give you a few indications of how you would identify somebody's going into a transition phase. Now, the first and foremost sign is that they lose the desire to eat and or the ability to swallow. Now, remember, we talked about that being a absolute in end of life, and the body is such an amazing, smart mechanism that when we are ready, our bodies are ready to shut down, it actually turns off our swallowing reflex so that we can't put any more food in it, saying, I'm not absorbing it, I don't need it for nutrients, and it's starting to do its own shutdown. Now, the danger here is that when somebody is not wanting food and they're very sick or they're at terminal with an end of life and you have all this fear in this household and things are kind of bonkers, a lot of people will start to guilt and force food on their loved one because they do know that if somebody is sick with a terminal diagnosis and starts to say that they don't want to eat, they know that they're going to die soon. But this is exactly a natural part of the process, and it's also a safety risk. If somebody is not able to swallow properly and you are force feeding them, and you're just encouraging, come on, mom, you got to eat, and you're doing it with good intention. First of all, it's just awful for them because they feel horrible, but they could choke and they can aspirate. They can have the food go down into their lungs, and then they die from that. So we want to educate our families ahead of time that this is one of the first indications that somebody, and it's a natural part of the end of life process. It lets us know the body's getting ready. The second thing is they become agitated or restless. Sometimes they talk about having to go home or go on a trip. So I've had patients that haven't been out of bed in weeks and they're adamant, I got to go. And they're kind of they're moving their little legs around. And they're like, I got to go. Mom, where are you going? I got to go home. I got to go. So it's almost as if, for me, I feel like they have one foot in this world and one foot in the other world. It can be a little confusing for them. So what I've done with families and patients is said, what can I help you with? What can I do for you? And they're like, well, I have to pack, or I have to, get some clothes ready, or something they feel. They know they are going somewhere, and they usually want to do something to help that be a better situation. So you help them do that. In fact, I've had families where they've packed a little bag and left it right next to the bedside, and then the patient just is so calm. It's like, okay, my bag is packed. They told them what they wanted in it, and it's next to. Now, this statement about going home, it's really incredible because in all different places in the world that I've worked with, all different religions, cultures, this I'm going home, and they are in their physical home, means something so much more than home. It's the spiritual home. It's something that is so incredible. And, I have seen it with all different types of people, and it is absolutely amazing and beautiful when they talk about that they know they're going home and they're quite happy about it. So, a third thing is they start to sleep most of the time. So again, personally, I feel like sometimes they are going back and forth because I've been at the bedside and had patients wake up with all of this information that I don't know how they got, which is really pretty incredible. So it kind of feels that they can go both places at the same time before they actually leave, which is done during the sleep, and they start sleeping most of the time. They talk about being visited by loved ones who have already passed, or even angelic figures. So for me, the most common is the past loved ones. And I will tell you that if you are with someone who will share with you that they have seen, and I have not seen personally somebody else in the room, they will ask me. You always answer honestly. They'll say, do you see that? Do you see my mom or whatever? I have not personally. I have felt things in the room for sure, and there have been different kind of, a white kind of aura type of thing, but not a shape or form. Who's to say that they're not seeing that? And this is so very common. But if you have the privilege of being with somebody at end of life who has seen somebody that they have loved for the first time in a very long time, it is undescribable what the joy and the serenity and the comfort that brings them. If they had any hesitation, undying, or fear where they were going, it's gone at this point. Angelic figures I have been told about, which is absolutely beautiful as well. Now, not everyone will have this experience. I'm just sharing with you from thousands of people I've worked with that this is extremely common. So I want you to know about it. What it does also is that families can get they're already really fearful. And if their mom is telling them that her mother is there in the room, they can try and shut it down and be very scared. You might say, well, these people are on a lot of medication. I've had patients on absolutely no medication and their oxygen saturation better than my own, had been sharing with me their experiences. So pretty incredible. They become incontinent, so they're not able to hold their bowel and bladder at the end. So you want to make sure that they are clean and that their skin is dry so that they don't have breakdown. They could have confusion or hallucinations. This has been written in the literature. I don't believe that these are hallucinations. I believe my patients are seeing what they are seeing. I do know that they can get confused because I do feel like they have one foot in this world and one foot in the next at the same time, and that can be confusing to them. And number 7 is a surge of energy. Now, this doesn't happen with all patients, so I don't want to share this with everyone because I don't want families to expect it. But when it does show up, I do share with them what that is. There is a phenomenon called a surge of energy, also known as like a rally, where you've had a patient who's been sleeping most of the time, is on their way out, and then all of a sudden they are wide awake and clear as a bell. And usually what they do is ask you for something to eat or drink. And it's, families could say, oh my gosh, it's a miracle, she's better. And it's not that they're better. It's this phenomenon that's happened. It's like the last wonderful time period before they're going to go, and they are clear as a bell. It usually lasts for a few hours. So I look at it like a window that's opening but slowly shutting, and I want my families to just soak up every bit of it. And if there's anything left to be said, that this is exactly the opportunity for it to happen. And number 8, giving loved ones permission to go. Remember about our woman with our gentleman who was sleeping on the floor. You can even take that further when somebody is not leaving in their transition phase and you know that they are ready to go, that they are dying. Usually they're hanging on for something. They're hanging on for someone to come. They're hanging on for someone to leave, or they're hanging on for something to be resolved, that they don't feel comfortable leaving because there's issues in the house or with people or something. And so we need to usually come to the place where we identify what that is, and then you have to share with your mom that it is okay for her to go, that you are going to there's an issue, you're going to take care of that person and and you guys are all going to be okay, that she can go now. And guess what? People have literally left within minutes from family members telling them that. It is absolutely incredible. All right, let's quickly go through a transition case study. You have an 80-year-old man with a diagnosis of terminal cancer. He has been home on hospice care for 7 weeks. Oh, he has a long time on hospice. That's good. On this visit, his family tells you that he has been declining to eat anything for the last 2 meals and that he is sleeping most of the time. What might you say to the family about this? On your visit the next day, his daughter tells you that her father was talking to somebody in the room that she could not see. When the daughter asked her father who he was speaking to, he replied, "My mother, can't you see her?" So number one, what can you tell the daughter about this? So let's start with, let's talk to the daughter about the 2 meals. And so we have 2 indicators here of the transition phase, of entering the transition phase: sleeping most of the time and declining 2 meals, because everyone can like skip a meal here and there. But if they decline 2 meals within like an 8-hour span, that they're really, then I start to say, okay, this is where I think we are. I do look for another indicator, but I'm on it. I'm all over this because I want to call this. I'd rather be wrong and call it earlier than be late, because once that person goes into their transition phase, that deep sleep, people cannot have a conversation with them anymore. So that's what I want to tell her, that I think that her father's entering into his transition phase. And then again, there's more here. So this man is in the transition phase. I want to let the family know that once somebody completely stops eating and drinking, that person will most likely go into a sleeping coma within hours to days. And usually it's within days, but I also want to err on the side of caution because again, this is it. We can't go back and do this again. So I'd rather say it's within hours to days. Most commonly it's days, but I have had people go in within hours, and I want people to be aware of it. And then from that point on, usually from hours to days, that the person passes. What is the main role of the end-of-life doula in the transition phase? Well, it's to make sure that that patient is dignified and cared for, that that skin is clean, that the family is doing what they need to do, that that patient is pain-free, or the pain is at a minimum if they had pain. But you're also shifting your attention on the loved ones now and getting them ready for the time that their loved one is now going to die. It's going to happen, and I don't think, no matter how prepared we are, I don't think we're ever 100% ready for that moment. Actively dying. So now our patient is in that sleeping coma. What the family needs to do is make sure that that patient is turned and positioned so that there's no skin breakdown. There in the actively dying, there's going to be breathing changes, Shane Stokes, agonal breathing, labored breathing, rapid breathing, shallow breathing. This can be, by the way, extremely uncomfortable for family to hear the different breathing. The patient is really not being bothered by most of that, what's happening, because they're going into their coma, but it can be a labored and a breathing that's uncomfortable that we haven't heard before, and it gets the patient, the family can be very upset. So we want to make sure that we are returning and positioning the patient, and that the hospice nurse has taught the family how to administer the liquid morphine or other medications that might even out some of that breathing. Temperature changes you can expect. You can expect possibly a temperature increase before you get to a definite temperature decrease. So sometimes people will present with a bit of a temperature. And when I say a bit, I mean they can be warm up to 102.8, which 102.8 for you and me, we'd be in the hospital. So you want to use common sense. You want to, if somebody's wrapped up in blankets, you want to put a cool cloth and just put a sheet, expose their feet, let it be open to air. Not everyone gets a high temperature, by the way, at all, but everyone will get cold. And the cold, again, can be scary. People turn pale. They can turn a bluish color. Their lips can turn blue. They can get mottling, which is like different colors on their thighs and their belly. And when you touch them, they can be cold. This scares people. We want them to know that this is a natural part of the end-of-life process and not to be afraid. What would you do for somebody who was cold that you absolutely, wanted to help and love? You'd put blankets on them. You put socks on them. You'd hold their hand. I always say put a warm blanket in the dryer and go ahead and snuggle up your loved ones their whole time during their journey. They love a warm blanket, love you for it. And the last thing for actively dying is the gurgling of secretions, which is really, really something that can be very uncomfortable to hear. One of the easiest and most effective ways to resolve that is to turn a patient on their side, put a pillow folded in half the long way, and have them lying on a bit of an angle. It dislodges those secretions because those are secretions that are being built up and are at the pinpoint of gravity at their breastbone. Their mouths are usually hung open at this time. With the air going in and out, you can hear a little gurgling sound. It sounds actually terrible. It can really be disturbing to families. It's not bothering the patient. But please, if you want to get rid of that, which I want you to, is just to turn the patient on their side. If they start after a while gurgling again, you turn the patient on their other side. By that time, they usually have died. That is a very late sign, the gurgling, that somebody's getting very, very close to the time of death. And setting a sacred space. End of life used to be revered as one of the sacred passages. And we want to help restore that experience for both patient and families. And I have been privileged to see some, not many, to see some beautiful, beautiful end-of-life experiences and studied what the elements were that had that family and patient have such a beautiful end-of-life process. And that's what I share on my platform, because if somebody wants to have it that way, and why wouldn't you for something that is 100% guaranteed, everyone should have the ability with the education and knowledge to what those factors are and how it can be a sacred experience. Soft background music, dim lighting. You can use those candles with batteries. Aromatherapy, if that person likes certain fragrances, you want to watch out for nausea though with that. Gentle touch. Again, talk softly. Hearing is the last of the senses to go. The person can hear you, talk to them, encourage the family to talk to them. I always encourage family to talk to the loved one all the time. If somebody's not awake, it does not mean that they can't hear you. If they haven't had that heart-to-heart conversation for whatever reason, that can still happen. And pets. Allow pets to be present and snuggle or lay next to their loved one. The pets bring incredible comfort to the patient, and the pet absolutely knows what's happening. So the pet is going through the loss of that loved one as well. Please let them be a part of this process if it's at all possible. And I've seen incredible things happen with pets being just a comfort to that patient by their side. So it works for everybody. So thank you and congratulations. Okay, this is the time where I'm going to answer your questions live. So I asked you to write your questions in the question box during the webinar. And if you have a question that you haven't written in there, go ahead and write that now. And I'm going to go down the list and share the answers to those most pertinent questions that we have. At the same time, I am going to bring up the live semester information, because we have 2 live semesters a year, and our new live semester is starting on May 7th, which many of you are on this webinar getting a feel if that is the correct move for you. And so I want to share with you that we do offer you some wonderful specials because you took part in this webinar. So the first thing you need to know is that because you're on the webinar, the class cost is 50% reduced. We are making it possible for anyone who wants to enter this field. This is a new, progressive, non-medical profession that is just being embraced all over. So very exciting and happening really quickly, that we really want to give the best opportunity for anyone who'd like to take the training, and we want to give you the best training. Our goal is to produce the best end-of-life doulas out there so that you can go ahead and really make a positive impact where you live in your community because you're needed. So the certified end-of-life doula training, the regular price is $1,997. The webinar special is $997. And all of these come with the payment plans that you can take. The Doula Giver Specialist Training, the regular price is $3,997. The webinar special is $1,997. And in addition to those two, there are some incredible bonuses that we're going to offer again just for this webinar special. So there's two different bonuses. One, I think you're going to be particularly very excited about. So the first 100 people will get a complete entire video recording of the certification training in full that was done in Seattle, Washington in April 2018, and that value is $1,997. So that's in addition to just the class fee. Now, this second one I'm really excited about. The first 50 people are going to be put into the 30-day to your first client mastermind class. Now, this is something that I am going to teach myself. It's going to include step-by-step how to set up your business after your training. It's going to have a website template already made for you that you're going to just put in your personal information. And it's going to have marketing techniques. This is going to be presented by me. This is going to be a 4-week. It's going to be once a week. It's going to be 30 days to your first client. If you follow the steps, you will have your business up and running within those 30 days. So this is an extra bonus. This is the first time that we're doing this. This is for 50 people, and that value is $2,997. So these specials are going to be available till Sunday night at 12 o'clock. And everyone who comes and gets part of the semester that starts live on May 7th is going to also get the self-paced class. So you always will have your self-paced class for you forever. And then the live semester will be on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It'll have a live Q&A after each one of the classes that students absolutely love. If you can't make the live sessions, don't worry about that. You get the replay sent to you. At the same time, you're brought into your own class private Facebook group. So you're all starting at the same time. You all go through the training at the same time. You have peer support. You have trainers that are going to be working with you in the Facebook group weekly. You'll have assignments. It's a real sense of community. And then you have an ongoing mentorship program for a year after to help you get your businesses going and to network. So there's just a lot of incredible support, and it's just an incredible global community that we have. Okay, I'm going to leave that screen up. I'm going to start answering some of your questions here. All right, let me just see where we started. Okay, people are just saying all good. Okay, I missed the introduction. Is there going to be a way to replay the broadcast? Yes, Becky. So we're going to send you a copy, all of you, a copy of the replay of this webinar. I think you'll get it tomorrow morning. But in the meantime, while you're on the webinar, check your inbox because you were sent a special email from us that if you are interested in taking advantage of the discounted prices and getting in on those webinar bonuses that the first 150 people can take, you would like to go to your inbox and you can access that right now. That was sent to you during this webinar. You will get the replay, I believe, tomorrow morning, and we thank you for that. Okay, the next one, NEDAalliance.org. Okay, so it's NEDA. It's NEDA, and the website actual address is NEDALLIANCE.org. So it's NEDA Alliance, all one word, .org. And it's the NEDA stands for National End-of-Life Doula Alliance. So if you can't look it up by the .org, please Google National End-of-Life Doula Alliance.org and you will get the information for NEDA. So thank you for that. Is there a listing for aspiring doulas? I am in the DC area and would like to connect with others. Yes, you can go to NIDAalliance.org. They have doulas listed on that website, or you can go to the End of Life Doula Practitioners Collective, and that is where a lot of our graduates go to both. So the NIDA core competencies are in our program. So you are all able to sit for the exam. In fact, we have a prep webinar for you after you take your training that preps you for sitting for your national badge. And they have a listing of doulas on NIDAalliance.org. And also we list you in LPAC, the End of Life Practitioners Collective. That is where a lot of our graduate doulas will be located, so that either one of those sites, families can find you and you can help network with each other. For us, with our doula givers, we have people that are in our certification programs, whether it's the doula giver specialist or whether it is the certified end-of-life doula. We have our own networking that we do within this country, and also we're international. So we have all our end-of-life doulas on a monthly level and in a private practitioners group, network and help refer each other. And also I didn't specify that the End-of-Life Doula Specialist is a program that has 3 different trainings in one specialist title. So you will get the the certified end-of-life doula training, the elder care doula training, and the doula giver care consultant training. And what that is that really is designed for people who know that this is their calling, that they want to do this work and make a living from it. It is almost impossible to make a living that you can do full-time off of being an end-of-life doula, because you don't work with more than one patient typically at a time. And your patients will come and go. So there's not a steady, usually 40-hour work week with being an end-of-life doula in and of itself. However, if you go ahead and really want to do this as a full-time income, you want to do the doula giver specialist, and we priced it so that you can do it. We made that the same price as the standard price of the certified end-of-life doula, just so that people can take that. And what that is it qualifies you to be a consultant, to help people with their end-of-life planning, their advanced directives, their living well end-of-life plans. Where can they live? We have you do A, B, and C plans, because we don't know what people's financial situation, physical situation will be at the end of life. So we want people to be as prepared as possible. So you really are that resource that does the consulting with people right now while they're healthy, when they're doing their what you call estate planning. And so you can start being a consultant right away. And then you also do the elder care doula training so that you can work with people who are not necessarily at end of life, but need some form of assistance and are elderly in a holistic model of care. What's beautiful about that is that you have 3 different offerings that you can work with, and you're also accomplishing how you're going to make the shift to make end of life better. Because end of life, becoming better is not just showing up at the end for that very end of life piece. It is helping people to plan ahead, having them have these conversations, doing their advanced directive, doing living well end of life plans. All of that changes how we will do end of life. You don't want to just rush in at the end if we're really going to change the culture. So what I would say to you, that if you really are considering being an end of life practitioner and you want to do this is your calling, you want to make your living at it, go ahead and do that. Doula giver specialist, so you have the 3 different offerings, and also it's really good for you to be in balance, not just be working in the end of life crisis place all of the time. You'll have all 3 offerings. Okay, how do I become certified doula? Okay, Paula. So we went over that, but just again, you can, when you do the certified end-of-life doula training, that is going to be a 3-level training. It is quite extensive. Today we really did the level 1, but we did an overview. It goes really into depth. We have lots of case studies that you're going to have examples of family end-of-life case studies. You're going to also learn in level 2 the top 10 end-of-life disease processes, what the interventions are for comfort. You're going to learn about the medications used at end of life. You're going to learn all about your business, about legacy work projects, about bereavement and grieving. There is so much to the certification course. And how you do that is that you will get a link in your email that you can sign up for those courses. You can get that reduced rate. You will get the live entry into the semester that's starting May 7th, and you will also get your self-paced class. People usually do a combination of both. You have your self-paced class forever, so you can always revert back to it, and you're also brought into the Doula Giver Network and the Private Practitioners Facebook group. There's lots of wonderful adjunct support to it. So I hope all of that answers your question about certification. Is this the same training that will be done on April 20th? Yes, more or less it is. I think there's a little bit of a different format on the 20th, but it is basically going to be around the same type of format, Mary. So I hope that's helpful. Is it still possible to host an event in our city? Mary, I'm going to look into that. We had a deadline that we needed people to submit their information by, and that's a couple of weeks ago because we had put it up on a platform and people are marketing their events now. So if you can email us at doulagivers@gmail.com, we can possibly see what city you're in and how we can make something happen for you. We'll do our best to do that. So whether we can get you up on our platform or if we can just have you join in some way, and maybe share you on social media, that might be the way that we can do it. So thank you for that. So you can email us at doulagivers@gmail.com. Will there be a transcript of this? I need to leave to deal with an emergency. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Okay, so there won't be a transcript, but you will get the recording, and maybe that's what you were sharing. So you will get that by tomorrow morning. How do you get out of the public service? How do you get out to the public? Oh, yes, this is great. Jen, this is a really big issue. So we're finding that most of the doulas all over that are wanting to get their practices going are having the most trouble with getting their businesses out and the word out about their offering to the public. And that is why we put together the 30 days to your first client mastermind class. I have been doing this for a very long time, and I have found all of the things that work and things obviously that don't work. So within that 30 days, I'm not just going to tell you and give you little PDFs and pamphlets about what you should do next. I'm going to actually take you, if you're one of the first 50 people, I am going to coach you and mentor you step by step how to get into the community with your offering, giving you the templates, putting up your website, and getting your first client. Actually how to do it. And if you follow the steps, you will be fully successful and ready to go in those 30 days. So if this is something that you want to do, I would really recommend getting in on one of those first 50 spots that we have for that, because that mastermind class is going to be worth its weight in gold. Everything we tell you, and we do have a great business section that is with every certification course. And if you follow those steps, you will be successful. But some people, they do some of them, they get, sidetracked. Maybe they get a little bit fearful. We're going to walk you through in the 30 days. And so it's going to be a no-brainer. Either way, if you follow the business tools or you do the 30-day masterclass, you're going to be successful. We have all the marketing materials for you. So, great question. Where should doulas draw the line in getting involved with families' respective drama? I feel like I'd be inclined to contact estranged family and friends or intervene, retreat from family conflict that may arise. Yeah, Holly, this is a really good question. And you really always have to, we're going to teach you in the course how important it is to be grounded in your way that you work. So before you enter into your family's homes, we teach you how to really ground yourself and clear yourself of anything. But because you will be subjected to these things, and you are supposed to be part of these things, because these are part of the process of wrapping up loose ends at the end, helping families to repair wounds and forgiveness and all that, if that is what they want. And so that's the fine dance that you do. So we teach you how to talk to, this is all about your patient. We teach you how to advocate and build that trust with your patient so that you can have that relationship and bond where you can talk about family, issues that are going on. And is it something that you want to pursue? And how can I help you to do that? So that's really beautiful. And the second part of the ones to intervene, retreat when family conflict that's arise, well, I'm going to tell you that end of life has this really interesting way of having everything bubble to the surface, and people's anger gets totally misdirected. And it's upsetting, and they're in crisis, and it's going to happen. So we'll teach you techniques on how to handle that. And yeah, you do want to get involved when it's appropriate. And so you want to have, again, that grounded listening to your intuition, and also really being that calming force, that calming guide within this whole dynamic, which everyone in that family could be having a different experience with this end of life, and usually are. So it's a really beautiful place, and think of yourself as a guide. So we'll teach you how to do that. You don't personally ever impose your views. You stay non-judgmental. You stay neutral. You stay objective. You stay unconditionally loving presence, and we'll teach you how to do that. And it really usually allows miracles to unfold. And when those happen, there's probably nothing better that we could have done. So it's a great place. So thank you for that. That will go into really in depth how to do that in the course. Hi, Suzanne. Is the certification recognized in Ontario, Canada? We have certification doulas in 8 different countries. So when you are going to be certified with doula givers in a different country, you just have to know the end-of-life laws in that country, meaning we have advanced directives in the United States. You're going to want to find out what the comparable documents are. You also want to know if there is a national, and things are not really progressed to that level yet, but like the United States now has a national badge with NIDA, you're going to want to know, does Canada have something of that nature? And I assume in the future they will, where you can then go with your education and sit for an assessment exam and get that national credentialing. So when you're in another country, you just want to know, again, what your hospice support is, what palliative care is available, what documents for end of life that are legal are used in your country. So we'll talk about that when you're in another country and doing the doula givers training, what you need to make sure that you know from your country standpoint. As far as the training with end of life doula, it is recognized everywhere. It works everywhere, whether you are in a country with resources or when you don't have any resources. The doula givers training was birthed from a trip in Zimbabwe, Africa, where there were not a lot of resources. So putting together something that can be so instrumental without having the additional medications, support, equipment, and it worked great. Now we can add in everything that we do have, and it even is that much more better. So it's really important to understand how effective and important knowing what end of life looks like, how the body shuts down, the spiritual, the physical, and the emotional aspects to end of life, and what the power of your presence has so much to do with the healing of that patient on their journey and their family. It's so beautiful. It connects us all, and it's so very powerful. So thank you very much for that question. And we have a few doulas in Canada. Is there a payment plan for the specialist training program? Recently, I deal with a hospice care in my home, and they are not familiar with doulas for end of life. Hi, Valerie. So yes, there's a payment plan, and they're very reasonable for both the certified end of life doula and the doula giver specialist through these webinar links. So we made that really accessible for everybody. It's not surprising that the hospice has not heard about the end-of-life doula yet. They will. In 2 to 3 years from this point moving forward, you will know and have a doula in every county of this country. It is growing that rapidly and that needed. You also have the NHPCO, which is the National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization, has now an end-of-life doula council they put together, which was established within the last year, that is setting the standards for what they want their hospices. So the NHPCO is the membership organization for all of the hospices, whether they're profit or nonprofit throughout the United States, and they set best practice for hospices. So even though that hospice did not know about end-of-life doula yet, their parents, which I call the NHPCO, the parents of all the hospices, have established the End-of-Life Doula Council and has said that the end-of-life doula is now an intricate part of the end-of-life care team. They will be hearing about them and they will be utilizing them. So in 2 to 3, mark my words, in 2 to 3 years from now, you will know and have an end-of-life doula or multiple in every county in the United States. So yes, the payment plans are available. If you click the link that was sent to your inbox and keep watching for that, you can see both payment plans, one for the certified end-of-life doula and for the doula giver specialist, and both are really, really reasonable. So thank you for that question, Valerie. I'm a hospice CNA. Thank you for that. What other training do I need to become a doula? Do I need to be an RN? So no, you do not need to be an RN. This is a non-medical profession. What you need is your passion. What you need is the wanting and desire that you want to do this type of work. And then what you need to do is go through the training. All of my doulas that I put through the training, whether you go for the certified end-of-life doula or you become a doula giver specialist, which has the doula certification for end-of-life within it, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you sit for the national badge in the United States. And I even put together a webinar prep class in addition to your training that goes over all of the core assessments that you're going to be asked about in the exam that has that national badge attached to it, so that you're over prepared to sit for that exam. Everyone is doing amazingly well from it, and that's really going to be the stamp of approval. So if I was going to say that there's anything that I want you to make sure that you're going to have in addition, it's going to be the NIDA badge, but you just have to go through the training. So you have to know that you want to be a doula, and CNAs are absolutely amazing. You guys are the closest to the patients and do so much. So as an RN, I just want to thank you. I could not do my job without you, and the families love you. But a doula will allow you to really work on your own time frame, spend as much time as you want with the patients, and do an array of things holistically for them. So if that's your calling, I want you to really, Shelley, go for that and look into it, and please join us. Where and how are the end-of-life doulas being hired at this time? What is the career opportunity differences between the certified and the consultant? So, great question. So most end-of-life doulas have private practices. They are independent practitioners. Now, hospices are starting to want to bring on doulas. A few are, like one hospice will have their own end-of-life doula on staff. Is that a good idea? I mean, sure, it's a good idea. It's not the perfect scenario to me. The perfect scenario is that you're an independent practitioner, because I want you to be able to supply as much time as that patient's family is asking of you, and that you are needed. That is what we're missing in the mainstream healthcare. So I set my doulas up for private practice. They have been hired by hospices, and that's fine if that's what they want to do. The ideal situation is that they're simply referred by people in their community. Families in the communities will refer them to this doula, and I'm going to teach you how to set up your business in that 30-day mastermind class, that you reach significant companies in your community where you're going to let them know that you're an end-of-life doula, what you do, how you charge. We're going to walk you through everything you need to know in that 30 days. If you want to work for a hospice, that's fine too. But right now, most are private practitioners, set their own hours, set their own pay rates. And I think there's a lot of real beauty in that, because being your own independent practitioner, you're in charge of basically everything. And I think that's really important. What are the career opportunity differences between the certified end-of-life doula and the consultant? So there are two very different offerings. The consultant is working with healthy people. You're working with, I have so many people that come to me for consulting because they want to not get caught being sick at the end and not having things organized, not having their advanced directives done, not having made subjective choices for themselves and letting their families know what their choices are. So this is working with, again, a healthy population. Think of people in their 40s, 50s, 60s. And consulting, that's a different price point. It's a higher price point. When I had done it, a long time ago, I was doing $125 an hour with a 2-hour minimum. So it depends on where you're located. That's going to be definitely an impact on what you charge, is geographically where you're going to practice. And I'm going to teach you that in the 30-day mastermind as well. We're going to pick the high and low of where you live and then get something comfortable in between. And then I'm going to teach you how to put packages together, selling blocks of hours and time or services. And the consulting is a higher price point. Education and consulting is always going to be a higher price point. The certified end-of-life doula is when you are there being that active doula, taking care of that end-of-life patient. So again, think of consulting with families that are healthy. The certified end-of-life doula is when you're there doing the work at the end of life. So two very different scopes of practice and two different price points. So we'll go over that. That's why I really say, if you really want to do this work, do the doula giver specialist. You can finish your education and start your consulting work immediately. And there's different ways to do that. Your end-of-life patients are going to come and go. Sometimes you're going to have a lot of work. Sometimes you're not going to have a lot of work. And I don't really advocate for taking more than one end-of-life patient at a time, because I don't want you being with a patient and your other patient needing you and not being able to go there. That's a terrible feeling. And that's what I felt as a nurse many, many times. So we'll teach you all about that in the program. But those are the two differences, Shannon. So thank you. Are these two trainings something to be done one after the other if one chooses, or does the specialist training include the basic certification training? So let's be clear. The specialist training includes the end-of-life doula certification. That is your foundation. That is what you really are going to be known for, what people are looking for, that you need to be really solid and good at. And then the consulting and the elder care are really specialties that you're going to be adding to your end-of-life business and offering. So you do them in sequence. You do the certified end-of-life doula first, then you do the care consultant, then you do the elder care training. But the specialist package is bought at once. So I hope that makes sense. So you will do them in sequence, but your end-of-life doula certification is part of the doula giver specialist. You'll have 3 different certifications that you're offering, and they're fantastic. Options for people living in Canada, and are there organizations that work together between the U.S. and Canada? I ask because I live in Ontario, Canada. Oh, well, that's great. We just had another Canada question. So we have a few certified doula givers in Canada. Unfortunately, at this moment, we are friendly with other doulas and people that do the work in Canada, but there aren't organizations necessarily working together at this moment. But I love the idea of that, that's for sure. What we say when people take the doula givers trainings and they're living in another country is just, you need to make sure you know what hospice services are available, how people qualify for the services in Canada, what the paperwork for an advanced directive or something equal to that is in Canada. But the education transfers anywhere you live because it's universal end-of-life training, which is incredible. So I hope that helps you, Nikki. Yes, as far as training goes. Got it. Okay. Thank you so much. Do you find being an RN more of a help than or a hindrance? Polly, I love this question. So there was a while that people would contact me and say,
Can I do this training? Can I become a certified end-of-life doula? I'm not a nurse. And I say, and for a while there, I was saying, good, I don't want you to be one. But now I've changed that. I've softened a bit, and I'm going to be very, very honest with the answer. It's going to work for you, and it's going to work against you. So I always will be reiterating that if you are a nurse and if you are a mainstream medical, you have to really rewire how you think and how you're going to do care, because we are the fixers. We are the kind of tough love. This is what we're going to do. You're going to take your medicines. You're going to get up. We're going to take a walk. This is what we're going to do. The end-of-life doula is very, very different, because you don't want to take more control away from that patient. That is 101 Doula Giver Foundation, is that you have to get your objectives met, but it's how you do that. You let the patient be in control. We do not ever negotiate on safety. But there's techniques that we have to use to do it. So is it going to come in handy for you? Absolutely. You have privilege to seeing disease processes and, maybe having, again, some of the other things, but you really have to shift your thinking, and that's going to take a little bit of practice. So it's a pro and a con, but I would say it's probably just a fantastic thing. The beautiful thing about becoming a doula and being a nurse is that you finally get to be at the bedside and do the work and stay with the patient like you probably went into nursing in the first place to do, that we're not able to do because we have all that paperwork to do, and we're, giving out meds and documenting. Why we became nurses is to be there for those patients and the families, and the doula position allows you to do that. It's beautiful. Kim asks, how are doulas paid? Good question. So doulas are paid by self-pay, like most companion care companies in the United States, which, by the way, is a billion-dollar industry. Things like Home Instead, Visiting Angels, Comfort Keepers, and they have no specialized training. We are specially trained professionals doing non-medical healthcare. It's a self-pay. I'm going to teach you how to do your scales with geographically based where you live. We'll teach you how to pick the high and the low end to that. You pick what's comfortable for you, and then how we put packages together. Families pay tons of money for funerals. We ask them to take a little bit of that out and put a budget together to really help people at the end of life while they can still benefit from it. And people are really starting to gravitate towards that concept. But for elder care and for consulting, people are so happy to pay for the consulting work because it brings them peace of mind. And the elder care, they're getting special holistic care. So it's really making a big, again, resurgence in the awareness of how important it is to care properly with the right practitioners in a holistic way. And again, not maybe pay $15,000 for a funeral, a couple $1,000 for the care before somebody dies can make all the difference in the world. Got it. Thanks. Okay, perfect. Is it possible to pay for the class now, but take it next time around? I am currently enrolled in a master's degree program that will wrap up in August. I would like to begin this training after completing my master's degree. Nance, absolutely. You can absolutely do that. You will immediately get your self-paced classroom that you can just put to the side. You'll have that forever. You'll also be brought into the practitioners group so you can kind of look around and see what people are doing as doula givers. And then when you are ready to enter the next live semester, if you do not want to start in May, you just let us know which one you want to enter, and you can still now get that reduced rate and hold your space. So perfect. And congratulations on your master's program. Okay, what is the difference between the two trainings you offer? So Mary Ann, the Certified End-of-Life Doula is our End-of-Life Doula training program. It will teach you the 3 phases of end of life, how to take care of somebody from the moment they get a terminal diagnosis all the way through to past the point of death with bereavement, and how to help families re-enter after loss. The other 2 training programs, in addition to the Certified End-of-Life Doula training, we have the Doula Giver Care Consultant training. That is geared for advanced care planning, not just the paperwork, but to help people make plan A, B, and C on where they will be able to live, where they want to live, how to make that possible, and all the paperwork that goes with all of that, including finances, their their living. We talk to you, teach you how to do living wills. We talk to you about all of the items that are of concern with planning our aging and end of life is what you're doing as a doula giver care consultant. And you work with people that are healthy. They're not even ill yet. We're planning ahead. And then the elder care doula training is to work with elders if you choose to do some of that before they are end of life. That's called, those 3 trainings, which you get separate certifications after you complete each one. You are then given the designation as a doula giver specialist. So a doula giver specialist can work with 3 different areas of the aging and end of life: consulting for aging and end of life, the certified end of life doula who can care for the person at end of life all the way through the time that they die, and even bereavement and guilt, grief, and also the elder care doula, so you can work with the elder population, providing resources, making sure they're getting care, all of the things that elders are struggling with, isolation, nutrition, all of the things managing that. There's 3 different offerings that you're going to label on your website with 3 different price points. And so the 2 differences are that you can become a certified end-of-life doula only. You can do that, which is wonderful and beautiful. Or if you really want to do this work and have it be your full-time occupation, you want to make a living doing end-of-life and aging work, I want you to become a doula giver specialist, because it's virtually impossible to make full-time pay as an end-of-life doula consistently. It's also a very high burnout rate if that's all you're doing. So the 3 trainings are including certified end-of-life doula, elder care doula training, and the doula giver care consultant training. And that is the doula giver specialist program. And then you have certified end-of-life doula. So you can visit the website, or even when you get your email, when you click on for more information on those sales links, they're going to really outline everything that are in the 2 different programs. So go ahead and take a look at that, because there's lots of great information there. Thank you, Marianne. Okay, where can I find out about your payment plans? Oh, Christine. Okay, so I have been informed that you were all sent an email during the webinar tonight. So if you go to your inbox, you should see an email from me that's going to have the 2 different classes with links to the payment plan options and to, again, fuller descriptions of the 2 different offerings that we're giving you, with all of the discounted rates and the bonuses. So if you go to your email right after this, and if you really want to get those bonuses, you want to sign up and be, either the first 50 people, you can get into the 30 days to your first client mastermind class, and the first 100 will get the entire video recording of the Seattle Certified End-of-Life Doula training. So Christine, that should be in your inbox right now. You'll also get the replay and another one tomorrow morning. What is the difference of being certified versus the specialty? Do both offer the payment plans? So yeah, I probably covered this, but I'll just share again quickly, is that the certified end-of-life doula training is standalone certified end-of-life doula training. The specialist has the certified end-of-life doula training as one of the trainings that's part of the specialist. It also has the certified care consultant training and the elder care doula training. And there are payment plans for both that are really reasonable. Should be right in your inbox right now. So Melissa, you can go ahead and check your inbox and see what those are. Is the prep course included in the Doula Giver Specialist training package? Yes, it is. So the prep course for the NEDA assessment is in either one of those trainings. Whichever training you take, whether it's a certified end-of-life doula or the specialist program, you're going to both have the access to the prep class for the NEDA assessment. So you can pass that. Thank you, Anne Marie. I like that question. Hi, thank you so much for this webinar. This is just a small point, but I just wanted to let you know that doulas actually means a female slave or servant woman in ancient Greece. It's a feminine form of doula, servant. Thanks again for doing this important work. Yes, thank you. I love that. And I usually do go into what is a doula. I think we will cover that in the full certification course. That's one of the first things that I'll tell you is what the word doula means. And you are correct. It's a Greek word that means non-medical person that gives physical, emotional, and spiritual support to someone else. Yes, usually refer to a woman servant. But I love the fact that doula means non-medical person that gives physical, emotional, and spiritual support to someone else. And that's exactly what doula givers do. Very exciting. Thank you for that. I so want to do this, but I have such a full schedule. How much time is truthfully involved? For example, I honestly don't want another full-time job. Either do I. I am retired, but I have such a passion to help people with this journey. Not sure I'm 100% clear, but hopefully. Yeah, okay, Ramona. So I understand what you're talking about. I think what's beautiful about the training is that you have options. You can use the self-paced classroom and do it however quickly or slowly you want to stop, you want to start, you go at your own pace. I don't like extra stress in my life, although there's obviously stress that we can't control. But anything we can control, this training and profession, if you do this work, this will change your life. So you're not only learning something that's going to have a huge impact in a positive way with other people, but this is going to change your life. And, I was doing a event tonight earlier with a live group. We had about 30 people show up. And I was telling them that I had never felt more alive in my life than when I started working as a hospice nurse. And I think that to kind of quantify it is that, when you're watching somebody at the end of their life, you start appreciating every little thing about your life and that you're still able to be part and have options for it. And you live in a state of gratitude that is probably very new to you on that level. And when you are living perpetually in a state of gratitude, you are so present and joyful that everything changes. You don't get upset about small things. You appreciate all the nuances. And so part of this is I really want to support your enriching journey in this course. So you will be helping other people, but I want this to be life-changing for you. So to practically tell you, the Certified End-of-Life Doula training contains 12 modules that have 1 hour webinars each, and probably another hour of text and assignment. So, you're looking at a 24-hour commitment, and then there's 30 hours of bedside with end-of-life patients that you can be credited for if you have experience in the past, or we ask you to start doing your volunteering with hospice. There is no time limit on that. People have finished this within a couple of months, and people have taken a year or two to finish it. Most really do it within a 6-month period. But again, I feel like the self-paced class is a really wonderful way for people to, with busy lives, not feel overwhelmed and stressed. Now, people who take love the live semester. They love showing up. They love knowing that they're showing up on a Tuesday, that they get to ask live questions after each class, and people tend to do a combination of both. So what I will say to you is that if you feel called to do this, if this is something that's burning in your belly, you have to honor that to really line up with your purpose. But again, do it the way that works for you. Do it how it works for you. But just, make sure that you're listening to that, because that's your compass. That's your alignment that's going to be bringing you into a place that is your purpose in life. And there is no better feeling than when you are lined up with that. So I hope that has answered your question. The self-paced classes were designed that you could work with at your own pace and work with our trainers by their availability Monday through Friday at your own pace so that there isn't stress involved. So thanks, Ramona. I hope that answered your question. Is there a group of end-of-life doulas in CT? Yes, Edith, there's actually our largest group of end-of-life doulas in Connecticut. Connecticut's a pretty progressive, great state. You've got Natalie Bonifay in New Haven. You've got Dawn Whelan. You've got you've got a whole CT group that started their own mini group. So within doula givers that we have networking groups, it's called CT doulas. They have their own group. So there's a really wonderful group there. So that's pretty perfect. You just answered it. Thank you. Okay, Catherine, thank you so much. How long is the training starting in May? Perfect, Marianne. So let's go over that. So if you want to join into the live semester, it's going to be given starting May 7th. That's a Tuesday. It's going to be at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 1-hour webinars, and they're going to have a live Q&A after each session. It's going to be Tuesdays and Thursdays. The first 6 weeks is going to be the certified end-of-life doula training. The following 6 weeks is going to be the certified doula giver care consultant training. So if you want to be a doula giver, certified end-of-life doula, it's going to be a 6-week course, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Do not worry if you can't make every live class. Most people don't. You are sent the replay right after the class, and you also have your self-paced classroom. You are going to be part of your own semester group of students. So you're going to be all going through the assignments and be connecting, asking questions in that interactive Facebook group that's monitored by trainers and myself on a daily basis. So you won't miss anything if you can't go to every live class. If you want to be a doula giver specialist, you're going to start on the May 7th. The first 6 weeks, you're going to be doing the certified end-of-life doula training. Then you're going to continue on for the next 6 weeks, again, Tuesday and Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for 1 hour each with live Q&A after for the doula giver care consultant training. And then you're going to take the elder care doula training online. So it's going to be either a total of 6 weeks for certified end-of-life doula training for the live semester or a total of 12 weeks for the doula giver specialist. And you'll get all those dates when you register to confirm, but it's Tuesdays and Thursdays. Thanks. Good question. Is the training on our own time, or are there certain days or times of the week that we are getting training? So both. To answer your question, Tina, both. You always will get your online classroom immediately when you register, so you can work at that at your own pace, and you can have that for life. But then we have 2 live semesters that we do in a year. Our new live semester is starting May 7th, and many, many people really want to have access to the live semester. So when you sign up for the same price, you get access to both. You get put into the May 7th start date for the live semester, and you will get your online classroom as well. Okay, Jen says, thank you. You are so welcome, Jen. Okay, can you put up the screen prior to the webinar bonuses? Sure. Sorry. I don't know how, these are a lot of questions coming in, so I'm sorry if you were waiting that for a while. And that will be in your email as well. This same information, Nikki, will be in your emails that are going to come to you, letting you know about the specials because you were on the webinar. I am a birth doula. Would you recommend me doing, hold on, I'm moving over the panel. I need to read the rest. Would you recommend me doing both? Only if you're called to do both. You know, they're very much the same in you're helping a spirit in, you're helping a spirit out. It's holistic care. It's beautiful. Both are so very important, but they're very, very different. You know, some people are really just into the babies. End of life is different. It's not as cute and pretty. It can be very emotional. There's a lot of intensity with death. Death is the second leading fear in this country right now. That death is palpable with family, with patients. And so our goal as doulas is to help guide them through and find that peace that they can be comfortable before they have their end of life. And it usually works really well. But there's very different things. So are you called to work in the end of life space? And we do have people that do both, our birthing doulas and our end of life doulas. But it has to be a really personal decision. It has to really resonate. You should always come from the place of true authenticity on what you are meant to do, what you are called to do, and only you can answer that question. So I think that you're on this webinar, you might be that person that's called to do that. So if you are, then absolutely. And how fun is that? You're a full circle doula of life. I love it, Tina. And you can even help you with a name for your marketing for that. So great question. Are there any hospice agencies that employ doulas? So Maria, yeah, there are a few. In fact, I had one of our earlier doula giver certified end-of-life doulas. She had 2 hospices in California that were fighting over her. Not fist fighting, but fighting to get her to be their doula for their hospice. So there are, and it's happening all the time more frequently. I hear, posts, and I have people say that their hospice is, putting together a position for hiring a doula, and it's pretty exciting. So it depends on if you want to work that way for a hospice, or you want to have your own business and have hospice just refer you to families, or people in the community refer you to those end-of-life families. Up to you. We'll talk all about that in the business section of the doula work. Thank you so very, very much. Blessings. Thank you, Karen. I appreciate it. Do you ever use essential oils during end of life? I know that certain oils can be calming and wonder if they have been used. Yes, and we go over all the adjuncts in level 3 of your certified end-of-life doula, Robin. You're going to learn about the adjuncts of Reiki, of massage, of essential oils, all the things that we recommend in your doula giver's comfort kit. And oils are incredible. So thank you for bringing that up. And we do use them and cover that in the course. How much does one charge for these services as an end-of-life doula? Melinda, it's going to depend where you live. So, if you're in a cosmopolitan urban city, you're going to have a higher price point than if you're in, a rural area. So again, we go through that in the business course, and we ask you to tell us where exactly you live. We find a price point of the high and low, and then we find something that's comfortable, and then we help you to put your packages together. So people have gotten anywhere from $20 to $85. That's for end-of-life doula. For the doula giver care consultant, I've had people get $125 to $250 an hour, depending, again, where you live, what you're marketing, and what you're comfortable with. But consulting and being a doula giver specialist and the consulting piece to that is always going to be a much higher price point than doing the hands-on care. We'll go over all of that in your business section, or hopefully you'll be in the 30-day mastermind class, because we will be walking you through every step to, within 30 days, have all of your business ready to go. Hello. Much of what you describe is covered by our hospice social worker. Do you see yourself as becoming part of a hospice team? Oh, yeah. So it might be covered in one sense by a social worker, but it's not in the time that a social worker is able to be there. And I only can say this out of absolute love and support for amazing hospice. The hospice nurses are amazing. The social workers are amazing, but they have many, many patients. And so end of life doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that it's just 1 hour visit once a week. Doulas are guides. Doulas stay. Just think of the birthing doula. We stay with that patient and family for the duration of that end-of-life process, guiding them through all of the phases of end-of-life to the very end. So there are overlaps of what we can do, but the time factor is completely different. And we are an intricate part of the hospice team. We work right alongside of hospice. We are a huge support to hospice. We actually, again, are considered a part of the end-of-life team. End-of-Life Doula, the National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization, has put together within the last year the End-of-Life Doula Council to set the precedents for using end-of-life doulas as part of the end-of-life care team. So thank you, Portia. End-of-life doulas are the non-medical professional that are filling in the gaps of time that is missing in mainstream medical. And it's working out the beautiful, both of them working together is working out beautiful. So thanks for that. Once certified, is there coverage with insurance so patients are not paying out of their own pocket? Not at this time, Nikki. So I've heard that there are things in the works. I always don't want to say things for sure, but there are people that are saying that things are going down with Medicaid, like vouchers and things of that nature, that are going to be covering the companion piece, which end-of-life doulas are going to be falling under. But I am not going to say that that's a guarantee, nor am I going to be giving a date for that, because I know that things don't always come through, and they come through a lot sometimes in a lot longer time period, but they are working towards that so that there is way for the patient to be covered. And down the road, that will be something I'm sure that will happen. Right now, it is really a self-pay care. Now, for us, we teach doulas to do sliding scales, and we also have some foundation money. So people have been given money to care for their families and paid through the foundation. So we want everyone to always get their services. So there's other creative ways that, again, I'll talk to you in the certification training about that, how we can access funds to occasionally have pro bono work done that you can do as the doula and get paid from a third party so that the patient doesn't have to pay if they don't have money. Can I do just the training first and at another time do the specialist training? Ramona, you can. I mean, you can. We have made some I guess, talk of possibly having it. It looks like it will be a higher price point because it would be a full pay for the other course. So the thing that we really want to say is that if this is something that resonates and that you feel that this is your calling, we've made the webinar specials so affordable to everyone, and that specialist training especially, because I really want you to know that if this is something that you want to do as your occupation, you want to focus on doing the specialist. I want to make that the same price as if you were doing a certified end-of-life doula standard price, so that you can take advantage of it. So to answer your question, yes, of course, you can take the other training in the future, but it will be a bigger price point. The webinar specials, again, will be available for the next live webinar, probably. I don't know that all of the bonuses will be in there, but also, it will be the same price point for the specialist, including the certified end-of-life doula that it seems like you might already be taking. So again, it will probably come out to a little bit more, but you absolutely can do the specialist later on. But really think about it. Think about what you really want to do and what the value is here. The payment plans are really affordable. I was a NICU RN for 20 years. Do you also address pediatric transitions in your course? We do, Catherine. We talk about pediatric end of life. It is, obviously a very different energy. We don't have a lot of pediatric patients because they are usually in hospice hospitals or other wonderful facilities that cater to children. So we don't usually get a lot of because we work really right alongside hospice in the home environment for the most part. You don't see a lot of peds, but we do get them and we do address it because we do want you to know what the differences are and what you can expect if you do have one of those cases. So thank you for the work that you do. Do you recommend any books? Yes, Julie, I recommend if you want to do this work, I want you to be on top of the current pulse of what is happening in the medical system with our aging and end of life. The first book I'd want you to read is Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. And we have a recommended reading list that we will tell you in the certification classes and the specialist classes that we'd like you to read. But I'm just going to put that out there for everybody, that Atul Gawande, know what's happening inside the medical system right now, the gaps in care, the way that we need to do holistic care, conscious caring for people, and do a better job at end of life for them. It's not happening. Do you see a future for home funerals, and would that be a possible adjunct to end-of-life doula work? Great that you're talking about that. There's a whole section of home funerals, natural burials, cremations in your certification course. So we go over all of that. Do I see a addition to it? You are an intricate part of sharing that information as an end-of-life doula with families who usually want you to be part of that process. There are different roles that you need to know what you need to do. If somebody wants to have a home funeral, we cover that in your certification course. So yeah, a lot of people are moving to wanting the home funeral natural burial, Nancy. So it's important for you to be really educated in that. And we give you all that training in the course. Love it. I love that option. Do you need to have experience with hospice? No, you don't. We're going to give you so much great education, but we are going to have you, if you have no end-of-life experience, we are going to have you start volunteering. Recommend highly that you start volunteering with a hospice so that you can be in the atmosphere of end-of-life scenarios and get familiar with the hospice team and what they do and how things work. So you don't have to, but you have to be comfortable with the fact that you want to work in this sacred space. And if you're on this webinar, then I feel like you're called to it. Also, is there any heavy lifting physical in this career? There's really not heavy lifting, but there are times that you might be moving a patient and helping them in bed, like to reposition. We go over this extensively in the course. You set up your doula practice. You are not required to do any physical care as an end-of-life doula, but you want to make clear what you do and what you don't do, and that's part of what you have on your family interview checklist that we're going to set you up with the business portion of what you do. Again, I'm going to always ask you to pitch in to help move a patient and help, a little old lady move her husband if she needs to, but only things that you feel completely safe with, but you are not required to do, not heavy lifting or anything of that nature. And you're not even required to do any physical care or anything physical if you are not comfortable doing that. So you don't have to have that as part of your practice. Thank you. I recently moved to North Carolina and retired. I have been a caretaker for 3 family members through their hospice journey. I don't have a network of people here and wonder about the viability of finding clients to serve. Well, I have to tell you, Barbara, that people die everywhere. So I have had doulas in remote little areas have clients. It's just how they get them. We teach you how you will reach your community and get the word out about your services. So you don't have to worry about that. We do like to, again, with the doula network, have you meet the doulas that are closest to you. I always love to see that there can be some camaraderie, some support, some referral systems, and you don't have to worry about anything about finding clients in any location, because people, wherever they're living, they're having aging and end of life. So we will cover all of that. I would like to work with elders, but also with children at the end of their lives. How can your classes help me with end of life for children and their families? We do. Thank you, Sharon. That's a beautiful endeavor. We do talk about children. End of life really is a overall physical process. There is a psychological difference with a child who's at end of life and with their family, what they're going through. And we will talk about that in the course, but then you will have to specifically go and market yourself, if that's how you want to work with end of life, into making those connections, and we'll guide you on how to do that. Robin, awesome. Thank you so much. You are so welcome for all this information. You bet. I am an essential oil addict, haha, and I know how positive they can be. Yes, I love them too. I have oils all over. Yeah, there's one right to the right of me. I could reach out and put it on right now. It's peppermint, but if you're just curious. But yes, they're really effective, and they calm the environment, and they're beautiful. Are you familiar with INELDA in Minnesota? Yes, they are another training company. There are several end-of-life doula training companies. They're I think there's a danger in the sense that you're calling yourself an end-of-life doula training, which is totally fine. But the end-of-life doula trainings that are out there can be very different in their curriculum. And so that is the danger that we saw in the profession. And that's why NEDA, the National End-of-Life Doula Alliance, is the non-membership umbrella in the nation for all of end-of-life doulas, so that you can go and have core competencies that you pass, so that you're walking through the door with a NEDA badge. People know that you are capable and that you have a full scope of practice. So, again, the benchmark is really that NEDA national badge. Always go ahead and find out the trainer that you're going to train with, the curriculum that you're going to be learning, and make sure that that resonates with you, because everyone has kind of a different affinity for certain trainings or people and what they're looking to get out of a training. So great, thanks. I just registered for the Doula Giver Specialist training. Thank you. That's so great. Will I be informed? I am one of the 51st people. Yes. So definitely within the next 24 hours, all of you who register and get in on the first 50 for the bonus and for the first 100 will be notified. So that would be within the next 24 hours. We had 1,012 people sign up for this webinar. I can't believe it. It's becoming so popular. So that's why I really say to you to go to your inbox if you are sure that this is something that you would really like to do and really heavily consider. The payment plans are so reasonable. These bonuses, especially the mastermind class, is invaluable. And that's if you really want to practice. If you are called and know that you want to do this as your profession, make that investment and get in on that. And you'll be notified within the next 24 hours, and you'll get your classes. You'll get your instant download classes. You're welcome. Jenna Willard, our lead trainer, will introduce herself to you. It's an incredible community. So I'm going to say that you're probably in on that. I'm excited, and you will definitely get notified. So thank you, Pen. Are there end-of-life doulas for animals? Is this part of your course? No, it's not part of our course. We do talk about pets in the course and how they are a part of caring for the person at end of life. It's so important to honor the pet in this process. We don't have end-of-life doulas for animal as a course, but I think it's a beautiful thing. It's also a very different thing. So animals really don't like a whole bunch of fuss and muss. They don't like a lot of medication. They definitely don't want, prolonging and all of that stuff. And there's a different way that we communicate with animals. So I think that's beautiful, Catherine. And I'm sure that there will be an end-of-life doula for animals. We do very much talk about the animal part and role in the end-of-life process because it's so important. And I always say that pets can be better than morphine as far as bringing comfort. And the pet is losing their loved one as well if the person's dying, and the pet is feeling that loss too. So we honor that pet as well, and we learn how to work with that dynamic. So that is our last question. And I want to thank each and every one of you for coming on this webinar and staying on it so late. I am so grateful and thankful that you stayed on, and I'm so glad that I can answer the questions. So you're going to get a replay of this. You're also in your inbox. You have an invite right now to go ahead and to get those bonuses and to register if that's something you'd like to do. You guys have been absolutely amazing. I want to thank you for being part of this. And, I hope this knowledge in wherever you go with it will serve you well. And we get emails from people all the time that take level 1 and years later use it and the difference that made for them. So thank you again for being part of this positive change that is happening out there. It is so exciting in a time that there are so many things that are really not going the way that we want. There are some things that are absolutely going in such a great direction, and this is one of them. So thank you all for being part of it. My name is Suzanne O'Brien. I hope to see you all in class. Talk to you later. Have a great night, everyone.